The date is July 6th, 2025. I am here in Myerstown, Pennsylvania. It's a beautiful day, sun is shining, it's 80 degrees out, and I am here with a dear brother and a great friend, Mr. Eric Noel Hargaden. And Eric has a story he wants to tell us. So I will pass it over to him so that he can introduce himself, and then we'll get into some questions. Brother Eric?
Thank you, Harrison. I suppose I'll start off at the beginning. I was born in 1953, and my father was a police officer, and he was involved in the political side of things in Ireland, and Ireland was a political landmine and has been for many years, right into the 70s. So the events and the job and the things that happened had an effect on the marriage, and there was a lot of violence. So things just didn't work out in happy ever after, and I was the only child. And I went to an all-Gaelic school. I had a deep respect for republicanism, as I understood it. And I suppose on my mother's side, we were Michael Collins supporters, and Michael Collins had been assassinated. But the point is, that's the form of republicanism that we believed in. And we didn't have the greatest trust in government. And some things just never change. So I came to the United States because of the massive unemployment in Ireland, which was over 25%. And I had worked most of my life there, and I really had nothing to show for it.
What year did you come to the States?
In 1990. So I had a business, and I invested the proceeds in stocks, and that was another scenario where the stock did well, but there was ill will within the family, and it ended up not benefiting anybody. But my reason for coming to the States was my father was in Los Angeles, and I wanted to try and reconcile the bridge and the gap and the missing link in my life. And I came to Los Angeles, and as I was getting on the plane, my mother, who had an uncanny art with words, said to me, "Well, Eric, you're off to Los Angeles and you're going to be with your father. And I was hoping I could tell you something that might help you." And she said, "The only thing I could think of, Eric, was this. In all my life with Tommy, he never fulfilled one promise, ever." And that's what happened in LA. So moving on from there, I worked in Los Angeles, and I had, apartments in not such good areas. And I became aware of the multicultural society that I'd never really experienced, because Ireland was not multicultural. And I ended up living in some, what would be called, dangerous areas. And back then, LAPD would not allow you to know how dangerous the area was. If you asked them, they couldn't tell you.
And just for clarification, when you went to LA, you got a job with the Los Angeles Police Department, correct?
Yeah, I lived in Venice, and I had, I saw the gang activity, and I saw the Mexican gangs and black gangs and murdering each other, and the ambulance pulling dead bodies out every day. And I had some run-ins with them because white people just, didn't live where I lived. And I had a taste. And I decided that, as my father had turned out to be such a disaster, and the whole thing had been such a disaster, I thought, well, you should try Los Angeles Police Department. If nothing else, you might even enjoy the violence. So that's my Irish Mick background for you. And that's what I did. And I think that covers my background in LA.
It does.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about how your injury on the job affected your life and how you eventually ended up moving out of LA.
Well, I think to do that, I'll just briefly cover my experience in LA. I went through all the courses, and I had experienced so much evil and violence in Los Angeles that I became aware of the Lord, Jesus Christ, and I realized that I was dealing with spirits, not dealing with flesh and blood, even though I didn't realize and didn't fully understand the Bible. And I didn't actually have a Bible. My mother had read the Bible to me as a child with pictures in it. And I always remember Solomon trying to chop the baby in two and all that stuff. But I became aware by working in Los Angeles Police Department of the evil that was there. And my father was an evil man. So I didn't have much padding. And it allowed me to see the real working mechanism of the police department.
And your father, he also worked for the police in California, correct?
Well, he worked for the city attorney's office. He was the chief investigator for the city attorney's office.
Chief investigator for the city attorney's office in Los Angeles.
And he was a Mason.
He was a Freemason.
And he was a high-ranking Mason. Mm. And he would do nothing to help me get the job. Mm. He wouldn't even make a phone call. And obviously the police department contacted him, and whatever happened or didn't happen, I was subjected to 3 or 4 or 5 extra interviews that no one else had. Now, interestingly enough, I was always a good reader, and I studied for the exam, and I scored #1 in Los Angeles at a time when the news media were out there filming miles of people for over a week applying for jobs in the city of Los Angeles. And I scored #1. And despite scoring #1 and not having a record, I had all those extra interviews, and I was accused of many things. And I know that they went to Interpol to try and see if they could find something on me. They weren't just satisfied with their own investigations, etc. So I joined the Los Angeles Police Department after having an interview with someone and realizing after umpteen attempts that this was an ongoing process. Mm. And I executed a Masonic handshake. And everything worked out swimmingly after that. Mm. So that's how I got into the police department. Yeah.
So you got into the LAPD,
yeah.
And then you got injured.
Yeah.
You got injured on the job.
I got injured on the job.
Got injured on the job, and as a result of that, you are 100% disabled.
Yeah.
And after leaving the police department, you stayed in California for some years.
That's right.
And then now let's talk about, tell me about how you first became introduced to Eric Jon Phelps.
Okay. Well, I had an interest in the book, and I had an interest in the spiritual aspect of it. And I had an understanding that there was evil, and it was a spirit thing, and that I was surrounded by it on the job. And not just from the point of view of the criminals, but I also could see the spiritual effect of evil in people within the police department who were actually wearing uniforms, etc. And I was an only child, so I was tuned a little bit different, and I picked up on things. So I worked hard to be effective, and I was not familiar with working in a multicultural environment, not in a military type organization. And I was denied a lot of positions because I was very much a minority. In fact, at the graduation ceremony, some of the other race people there passed down a document we all had to sign, and when it was to be handed to me, they passed it around me. And when I questioned it, I was very badly treated by one of these individuals who happened to be quite muscular. And I just told him, you give me this to sign it now, or I'll show you that everything your mother ever told you was a lie. So even just before I went to the graduation ceremony, I encountered behavior that was erratic. So this permeated throughout the police department. And I would have to say that the people who were of my colour and race hid from the realities and really didn't want to know. So I had many fights whereby I would call for backup and I wouldn't get any. And I was actually threatened by some of the students that I would encounter some martial arts expert in Los Angeles and that they wouldn't assist me when certain things happened. And then later I would find a Muslim put in charge of the whole unit. And I had no idea of how to deal with the Muslim. And it was kind of ironic that when I first met him, he told me privately that he had been in a Catholic seminary. Mm-hmm. And I'm standing there. And he assumed, me being Irish, I'd be Catholic. And I was. And I understand it. And I told him, I said, where I come from, this is my first meeting him, he's in charge. Where I come from, we don't trust ex-priests or ex-police. So when I'm leaving your office, should I walk or should I run? And that conversation would haunt me because he constantly was on my tail. And if I had to use a wrist lock or something to fingerprint somebody, the minorities would tell me, hey, fill in the use of force, fill in the use of force. But this just wasn't basically a use of force, it was a protective move. You've got your two hands on the man's wrist and you're fingerprinting him if he decides to hit you. You know, so you better have a firm grip on it, so you can sense it. But everything was turned into a use of force report for me. And no matter what I did, I was extra criticized, etc. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, I would be sent upstairs to deal with a white supremacist. And I dealt with that situation. He was in a padded cell, and he was flooding the place. And there was a man down as I came out the door, and we went down there, and we had a new guy in charge. It was his first day to be in charge on his own. He'd been under supervision for 6 or 7 weeks, which was like a long time. And I told the officer in charge, we do not enter without a nurse. That's the protocol. But he had a group with him, and they decided to enter, and they entered through the Sallyport doors. And this man, who was allegedly down, came off the bed like a rocket ship. The beds were nailed to the floor, and he beat his way through all of them and escaped out into the corridor. And I had asked an associate to go and get a gurney, and I was the only guy outside, and he came up with the gurney, looked in the window of the cell, saw the group in there, saw the fight, saw what was happening, and he ran away. And I was the only guy there with the gurney. And I put the gurney on the floor and put it at an angle, and the man came charging out with no shirt on him, covered in sweat. And he's got eye contact with me, and he's about 225 pounds. And he's on PCP, but I don't know that. And I keep an eye on him, because I don't want him to look down and see the gurney, and he doesn't, and he trips, and I jump on top of him. Mm-hmm. And when I'm on top of him, I realize from the smell and the sweat on him that he's on PCP. And that's your ultimate nightmare, because somebody like this has the strength of 20 men. And I'm trying to hold him on the ground. I want to choke him, But I realise now, I'm the only white man there. They're all the witnesses for the prosecution. And my Muslim lieutenant, 2 days prior, had spoke to a sergeant who had me berated with him listening in an adjoining room, telling me any more use of force from you will pursue you to termination. So I knew I couldn't choke him. So I held on to him as best I could. And I looked up, and the rest of the group were standing there at the wall looking at me. And the building had no AC, and it's June, and it's hot, it's at night time, maybe 9, 10 o'clock. And there's no air. And one of them sprays me with pepper spray. Now he's meant to be spraying the other guy, but the pepper spray just stays in the air because the air is static. Mm-hmm. And later he would tell me that when they were on the course, the combat instructor never showed up. So they had no combat experience. He didn't know what he was doing. He was trying to help me, and I believe him. But we had people there that were not trained with hands-on tactics to handle the situation. Mm-hmm. Unbelievable as that sounds. So, in holding him on the ground for a protracted piece of time, because the only thing I could do was stay as close to him as possible, like become part of his body, because if I raised myself in any way, he would have such tremendous force in his hits, in his punches, that I'd be devastated. So I hung on and hung on and hung on, and eventually a group of them joined in to try and subdue him. Now, the man in charge had a taser. There's a claim on a report that he said, step aside taser. I never read the report, but I know the report's a lie because it didn't happen, and the person that told me about it knew it didn't happen, and I didn't even bother to ask to see it. But there was a cover-up. And when the gentleman came in to assist me as they grabbed him, I would liken it to a hot box of Colonel Sanders chicken, where you're really hungry, and somebody opens up the box, and the chicken's in there, and it's just, you're just so hungry, and you put your hand in, and you grab that chicken, and it's so hot you have to let it go. Now, I'm holding this man on the ground for a protracted period of time, and these grown men that are coming in to assist me are picking his arm, and he's breaking away from them. And this goes on for a minute or two, which is an unbelievable length of time in a very serious struggle like that. And the result of it was I lost my nerve system in my back, and my back was damaged, and my testicles were damaged, and my entire body was messed up because of it. And then I lost my teeth because of the medications they put me on, and I just couldn't recover. And I ended up going out the door in 2004, somewhere like that. I was retired out. But that was the situation. And there was never any follow-up report. I never had anybody from the police department ever call to see me from a benevolent point of view.
So how did you first become acquainted with Eric Jon Phelps?
Well, between going to the doctor and the other things that are going on, I'm following Phelps, and Phelps he's a journeyman preacher. He's going around to different kind of broadcasting places, and he's broadcasting, and then he gets his own station. So that meant that every day there would be a broadcast. It was 24/7 World Radio, and I listened to his stuff and recorded them. I mean, if I didn't have them on a record, I would play them back on my phone or whatever. But yeah, I saw him as the truth. I saw his preaching as unmaligned by current thinking. I knew that there were liar Bibles out there. I could see the connection between the Catholic Church and the liar Bibles. And I knew that Westcott and Hort were witches. And I have to give that to Phelps. I knew that from him. So I had tremendous respect for him, tremendous credibility for him. And even though I was on reduced money, etc., I made sure I sent money every month to him. And if I had anything extra, I gave it to him. And when my father's funeral money came through, my father left me nothing, by the way. I'm an only child, so him and the Masons denied me everything in life, which is why I don't have any time for them. Because they are evil, and they are worshippers of Satan, whether they want to admit it or not. They call him Lucifer, call him anything they like. but I know these things personally. And he denied me everything in life, and he left whatever he had to strangers, and I was his only child, and I was not allowed to know that there was a funeral. I wasn't told by anybody there was a funeral. I'm sitting on the porch in Los Angeles, and the postman arrives with a letter from the city attorneys telling me that condolences on the loss of your father. He's dead 3+ months, and I'm reading it. And that there was some burial money that wasn't used, and they'd like me to fill in this form. And I filled in the form, and I got the check, and I signed it, and I sent it to EJP Phelps. I never took a penny. So that was the Los Angeles experience. Now, shortly thereafter, time would go, and I would get more involved with Phelps, because Phelps' ministry was growing. So does that cover the background for you that you were looking for?
Yeah, why don't you talk a little bit about how you came to move out here to Pennsylvania to be a part of Phelps's church?
Yeah. Well, Phelps started off the private citizenship class, and this was the very, very beginning. And I wanted to buy the course, and I bought the course. So the first thing I did was I sent him the money. It was over well over 1,000, but I sent him the money anyway for the course. And I remember writing on the check something to the effect of, "Thank you for opening my eyes," removing the... So I got the course, and then he was going to have a class, and I went to the class, and...
in California?
Yeah. And sometimes the classes were out in Ventura, they were out somewhere else, because I went to several classes. But when I turned up at the first class, it had been on a day and he hadn't told me. And in my naivete, I, let it go. But it was something that was going to show its hand again, but I wasn't ready to see it.
Now, you went to multiple courses in California.
I did, because the course moved on from being a basic type structure course as to why you were where you were and how you would be freed of it, to a more elaborate course whereby you would have a different kind of bank account. You would conduct your business in a different manner, how you would file taxes, how you would deal with any corporate entity. So LLC was brought into the case, and in this particular case, the LLC was in New Mexico because it had anonymity. And then he would bring in other items like trusts, and what he had was an ecclesiastical trust. So the first thing was the bank account. So I'd been in California for many years, and I had bought this, I had a bank account with a bank that was taken over by Bank of America, Security Pacific, I think it was called. And it was a great bank, and I loved it. But Bank of America took it over. And I never had any help from anything with Bank of America. And later I would find out the Jesuits ran Bank of America. And it kind of made sense to me as to why I wasn't getting any help from them. Mm-hmm. So the concept of having an account with Bank of America that would recognize my status, anytime I tried speaking to them, there was always some attorney telling me they didn't know what I was talking about.
Right.
It was off,
And you're talking about the status that was a part of Eric's private citizenship.
The concept
course.
of on deposit, the contents of your funding being in the bank, but it's on deposit, on special deposit. This whole kind of thinking as to how you operate in a fiat system.
Private versus public status is what he was talking about.
Exactly.
Okay. So
Eric said, well, we have to have certain things done and signed, etc., etc., etc. So I flew out to Pennsylvania, and I met Eric, and I signed these papers in a notary office. And I just had the bottom sheets because there was a whole bunch of them. Sign here, sign here, sign here, sign here. So I signed them, but I didn't understand them very well. And of course, you trust the man, and he's your guide. He's your,
now these are the ecclesiastical trusts
Including the bank account for your special deposit account, etc.
Including the bank. So
there's more than one trip here now.
So what you're talking about is you're talking about getting set up one of these ecclesiastical trusts to which with your quote unquote new status that he has taught you about.
Which I've already set bank accounts up for before.
Right. And so this ecclesiastical trust is set up so that you can hold property in said trust.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you one question. Did he go over the trust with you before you signed the documents, or did he just tell you sign here?
Well, it was the same as what we did with the citizenship. You turned up at the notary's office and you signed a paper. And in this particular instance, I think I didn't have the book because the book had to be printed. They were binders and they were loose leaf, and he had a special paper and he put them all into plastic sheets, and there was one on each side, so it would look like whatever. And then there was the Ecclesiastical Trust that I was the person of, like the Hargaden Bible Trust, and then on the other part of that book was the actual church trust. And I never saw it because it was a long time between signing the documents in the notary office, and then we got the document kind of together, and I came back and we went to the bank. And at that time we're in the bank, and I liked the bank because the bank's taking care of my private account. And I remember going down to Bank of America with this Wells Fargo private account and showing them, and they were like, because they remembered me, because they thought you're weird, you know, nobody else was asking about it. So I showed them I had it. So I was very happy with Wells Fargo, and I just thought the lady in Wells Fargo was exceptional. She was the manager there, and she was an exceptional individual. She had real standards, and I really did like her a lot. Yeah.
So you've taken, at this point in the timeline, you've taken a couple courses with Phelps in California.
Yeah.
You're working on getting your declaration of status put together. You're getting your ecclesiastical trust, your private bank accounts. All these things are starting to get put in place.
Yeah.
Tell me next about how was it moving to Pennsylvania?
Okay.
Tell me the story about moving out
Well,
here.
let me just go back on these trips flying in and out of Harrisburg. I also took trips where I drove here, besides flying. I had the original declaration, which was filed in Georgia. Then the course over time improved, got more involved, different avenues opened up. So I had a second declaration, and that was filed in Lebanon. And I then had that filed in Harrisburg as well. And I had at least 3 more filings. So you're talking about the actual declarations, expanding, changing, and
Always
more
changing.
and more, more and more fluidity. And
well, let's also mention at this point things being put in and things being taken out as well.
yes,
But
well,
we'll get to that later on.
right. At this point in time, I have total trust in Phelps. And whatever is not right, I just see it as my own criticalness, being overly critical, or just not being gracious on my part. So I make several trips here because I am coming, and I brought stuff out here, and I put some stuff into storage, etc.
Well, it was Phelps who was encouraging you to move out of Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah.
And to move
Sure.
here locally to the Myerstown area.
That's right. And I had a P.O. box in Myerstown before I ever got out here. I had my cars insured in Pennsylvania for a year plus before I ever came, because it just didn't flow the way I wanted it to flow. There was kind of sort of complications.
Yeah.
And then I had a moving company where I and I also had a situation where I was losing my place in LA, and I needed to move, and I really couldn't survive on what I was earning, or not what I was earning, but what it was the stipend I was getting. And I'd been through a bankruptcy because I lost my house, lost my marriage, basically lost everything. And I also lost a certain amount of degree of my physicality. And I was surrounded by vipers. I mean, the attorneys and everybody involved, they were all vipers and liars. And I had nobody. Nobody that I could.
And here's this preacher.
Here's this preacher
that you trust, extending you.
And he's praying for me, and he's there. And if I'm really down, I can pick up the phone. And he was kind to me. And I mean, he was my cushion.
And he's encouraging you, brother, get out of LA. It's filled with sin. Come out here to the countryside of Pennsylvania.
Right. So I come out and I bring out a lot of stuff, and I'm now committed. And then afterwards he calls and he says, look, I'm sorry, but you need to come out and get your stuff and bring it back.
So, hold on. So you start bringing stuff out there.
I brought certain stuff out.
You brought, how many of your cars were out here the first time when he told you to go back? Just one? Or did you have multiple?
Well, I had one, but what I was doing was I was driving out and I was driving back. But I had come out and I brought everything here, and that was just a question of what I'm going to do with my stuff. I'm going to have a pod of some type, or I'm going to move this stuff. So I hired a moving company, and the moving company were going to move everything: furniture, beds, 8 dining room table for 8 people.
Right, from California to Pennsylvania.
Sure, yeah, and linens and clothes and shoes and all the sort of stuff that you have.
Everything.
Yeah, and I also had stuff that I'd shipped from Ireland because my mother died, so I had stuff that I had in storage. So for me this was a massive thing.
And so you get a lot
and I'm
of it
leaving
out
people
there.
behind me that and I've conditioned myself to leave them behind as well. But the bottom line is that I'm completely at his mercy now. So it's you need to move this stuff back, and it was something to do with the wife or something like this. Some of the stuff was somewhere she didn't like what it was. So what I did was, I went out and I got it, and I brought it back again.
Back to California.
Yeah, and I basically got in and I loaded, and he took me into a room at night, and it was like midnight, and it was hot as hell. And we knelt down and we prayed. And I've got the sweat running off my brow, down my nose. And then it's back out to the car, and I'm heading back to California. So, and I was so upset that I got in the car and I drove the wrong way. I left the church building, I went around, and an hour later I turned up and I'm looking at the church building again, and I realised, I'm after doing this run around the mountain job. So then I get the car going in the right direction, and with the guidance system back then couldn't handle the entire trip to LA. So you would have to put in half the trip, so I put in half the trip. And I get out on the road, and I remember pulling into one of those gas stations, a Sun or something like this, and I called California because it's several hours behind us, and even though it's like 12 o'clock, it's like 7 o'clock in California, or 9 o'clock, whatever. And I speak to a lady that I know, and she's kind of encouraging, and I tell her, I'm just exhausted. She says, well, drink the coffee, drive, when you get tired, pull in, and just stay in touch and take it easy. Don't let this emotional thing, she said, just let it go behind you. So I did. So then, I know this sounds crazy, but things came back to some kind of normal keel with Eric and I, And I told him that I, needed to make a final move and whatever. So he said, I'll send someone out to you. And I said, what? He said, I'll send a man out to you. He'll help you pack your stuff. Don't you worry about it. So I said, well, I'll pay for the ticket, Yeah, well, you don't have to pay for anything else, right? So, guy turned up, picked him up at the airport. And he starts helping to pack my stuff.
And real quick, what was his name?
Brendan.
Brendan.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Brendan had a brother down in San Diego, and the brother was married to a nice Filipino lady, but there was something going on with the relationship. I don't think he was very nice to her. I don't think he was a well man himself, and I think he had, when we're not well, we tend to take it out on those nearest around us. I think it was a touch of that. And the lady who called, and she knew Brendan was with me, and she wanted Brendan to come down. So Brendan had no way of going down, so I took him down to San Diego twice. And he even talked about staying there, and I said, well, there's a Honda motorcycle, you can have that motorcycle, and there's the crash helmets, and there's the stuff. And I said, we want to bring it all down, and you can have that stuff there, and then you can go down to San Diego, and you've got your own method of getting around. Brendan was a young guy, being in the Marines, whatever. So, Brendan then, was a little erratic, is the best way I can put it to you. I'm not sure he was used to being away, even though he'd been in the Marines. And he turned around then and he said, well, you need to pay me for this. And I said, well, look at Brendan, I'm feeding you. I bought you the airline ticket. I'm looking after you, whatever you need. You're not hungry. I said, I bought German beer for you. Anything you want, I'm buying it for you. But I'm not giving you money. That's not the deal. So a lady friend of mine came by, and then Brendan told her what a horror I was, and then she started berating me because she believed Brendan. And Brendan was there for a week nearly. And it was very difficult for me because I thought I was kind of managing him, and then he was saying things to her, and then she was attacking me. So I had a U-Haul van, and we were in the U-Haul van, and I was trying to turn the U-Haul van, and I turned the U-Haul van, and whatever way I turned the U-Haul van, I hit my mailbox. And Brendan was watching this, and he just let it happen. And that's when I realized, well, Brendan isn't as nice a guy as you want to believe he is.
So just so we're clear on this, Brendan was living at Phelps's church house.
Well, I found that out then.
Right, and then Phelps then sends him out to California.
Yeah, to help me.
To help you move, pack your stuff so that you could make the move.
Yeah. So I have Brendan, and I have a ticket for Brendan, right? So Brendan is there, and Brendan, has one or two friends, and they come over, and they're, driving very expensive Chevys with lifts and all this stuff, and you just know they're people that are out there living the dream, the California dream, going there for skiing. And California's interesting because you can go skiing on a weekend, and then you got the sun right beside you at the beach. Yeah. So it's this kind of, and they were people that enjoy that kind of life, and they knew Brendan, and Brendan knew them. So they had motorcycles. So I gave Brendan my helmet. And I told him, I said, be careful with it, because it's a very expensive helmet. It's about $1,200 to replace it. And Brendan didn't really believe anything I told him, for whatever reason. I don't think he was impressed with me as an individual. But anyway, the point being that he then had the conversation with these people about this helmet, and they said, well, where'd you get the helmet? Oh, Eric gave it to me. And I had a big nog, I have a big noggin, so I needed a really big helmet. And Brendan's a big noggin too, and it fit him. And the lady said to him, she said, that's a very, very expensive helmet. That's one of the best helmets you can get. That's a showy. So then Brendan was kind of learning from these other people that I wasn't BSing them, So we had the hired van anyway, and we're in the traffic, and we're pulling into Carson Shopping Mall to go for lunch. And I have the lady with me, and she's in the middle, and I'm driving, and Brendan's here. As I'm pulling into the Carson Mall, the lights changed, and I have a car behind me, and I realize I need to move it so the other car can get into the mall. Like I can't. And there's a little bit of a hump, and I gave a little bit of a gun, and the van is big and it's empty, and it goes up and it goes down, and there's kind of a whatever. And Brendan's a very nervous passenger, very, very nervous, and he starts screaming. And that was the moment where this lady picked up on the fact that he was telling her lies. That it wasn't me. But she wanted to believe it was me. So none of us are saints. But anyway, that's the situation with Brendan. So Brendan then starts crying, and his mother's birthday's coming up, and he's afraid his mother will die, and he'll never have another birthday again. And I realised there's some psychotic stuff going on here. And I said, don't worry, Brendan. I said, I'll make sure you get to your mommy for the birthday. And I booked the ticket and I paid the cash for it. And I took him to the airport and out he hopped. And I told Phelps that I was sending him back.
And what happened the next day after you told Phelps you were sending him back?
Well, this is where I become stupid. So I mean, the thing I'm coming to is I'm going to tell you something that just it just shows you the power of not wanting to see certain things. I told him that I was taking Brendan to the airport, and I was taking Brendan there in the evening, LAX, and Brendan arrived down, and he was getting out of the car, and he was going to give me a hug, and then he realised, no hugs required. He had not behaved properly, and he kind of knew it. So he ran off, and he ran into the airport. And I let Phelps know that the day before that I'll be bringing him, and he's on this flight, and you need to pick him up, and blah, blah, blah. He's going into Harrisburg with him. So the next morning, I'm sitting on the porch, and my Japanese mailman turns up. And he was a magnificent guy. And I had dealt with Japanese Hawaiians in California, and they fascinated me. They were just a different breed. And they had a lot of integrity. You mightn't fully understand their customs, but they were just really special people. And the mailman was something like that too. And he handed me this priority, overnight priority, the blue ones, not the real expensive ones, the traveling mail, envelope. And I'm sitting on the porch because I'm expecting the lady that's doing the moving for me. She's coming, she's from with the Dominion or something. And she's British, she's really nice, and she's nice to me, and I like her, and I felt comfortable with her. So, all my stuff is going now. And of course, all my stuff is packed, and there's no names in the boxes. Brendan didn't put a name in it, just packed everything, sent money together. But I didn't oversee it properly as well. But the whole thing was, it was very, very trying, and very, very demanding. And here I am on the porch, waiting for the lady to arrive. And I open the envelope. And it's from Phelps. And he's after going down to the mail and putting it in before 1 o'clock. So he knows what he's done, even when I'm talking to him. It's all premeditated, quite deliberate, and totally callous. When I open it up, it's one sheet of paper that says, "Don't come, it will never work out."
And this is the day that the moving truck is showing up to pack
the moving lady is showing up to finalize everything for the
finalize the contract for the move.
That's right.
That Eric Phelps sent this guy, his lackey Brendan, out to California to help you pack.
That's right.
And then turns around.
That's right.
Literally the day that you're going to finalize the contract for the move.
The contract is signed.
The contract
it is
signed.
finalized.
It is, okay.
The lady is out there to completely see how I'm doing and do I need any extra help. And when she gets on the porch, I seldom cry. But I was crying. And she said to me, "What's wrong?" And I just handed her. And she looked and she said, "Is this the guy you're going to?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Oh, Eric." And she then said to me, "I'm just going to cancel the contract. Don't worry about that." So I ended up getting one of those cube things. And I packed what I could into that, and the rest of what I put into
the storage pods.
Yeah, that's $450 a month.
Now, just to clarify,
Yeah.
this would be the second time that he persuaded you to move out to Pennsylvania, and then at the last second,
Yep. Bring your stuff back. Bring your stuff back, and then don't come. Yeah. So
okay.
I don't have any choice now. I have had to extend my lease with a landlord who let's just put it this way. If you wanted to know difficult, this guy was the compendium of difficult as far as landlords. But I was going month to month, and I was getting them to stay month to month. But I had a hole in my roof, and I had a hole in my floor. And the place was collapsing. And I couldn't find a place that I could afford. I couldn't find a house. And because of my condition, I couldn't really be in an apartment. You know, I was impacted by my injury and all the other things that happened. So here I was. So I got the pod loaded, and that lady that had experienced Brendan, she helped me, and she was tremendous. In fact, she basically did it. And she was kind enough to let on that I was helping her. I was, but I just wasn't at the races, buddy. And she did atrocious work for me, and came down to storage unit and so on and so forth. And I gave her the details of the storage unit, etc. If you need that and you want whatever, it's all there for you. And that's how I got the pod.
Right, and so
now it's Christmas, coming up on Christmas week.
Mm-hmm.
And of course we have rain and we have bad weather, and you're traveling up north and the weather's not the greatest. And my car now has the blower motor go out. And of course, you can't get the blower motor fixed because it's Christmas time. So I'm driving off on Friday, I think it was. No, Saturday. I left early Saturday. And there's a storm behind me. And I have to drive the car fast to try and stay ahead of the storm. Because if the car clouds up, I'm stuck. I can't drive. I can't see through the windscreen. So I got to Pennsylvania on Tuesday, which was pretty much moving.
So just for clarification, brother, after the second time that he told you not to come, he sent you the overnight letter saying, don't come, it won't work.
Yeah.
So sometime shortly after that, things were reconciled again, and it was decided that you are moving to Pennsylvania.
Well, we go better than that. I had already got a rental through him. So it's don't come, but there's a rental.
But you already have a place rented. Gotcha.
Yeah, right. So it all takes on a dimension that, I don't think the human brain can really grasp all of the realities of what's happening unless you're deranged. But if you're just somewhat normal, you can't encompass what's going on. It's kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I remember getting here, and I remember getting on the road, and I remember going through Ohio and these places, and I realized, man, you're doing good, you're doing great, you're doing fantastic. And by the grace of God, I didn't have any problems on the ride. So I did have one thing happen to me in Missouri, and I'm going to have to go to court in Missouri over that, and it goes on for over a year, but I do end up in Missouri court, and that's another interesting story. But the point I'm coming to is that it was exhausting. And I got here on Christmas Eve, and COVID hit February.
Well, just for context for everybody listening, this would have been Christmas of 2019.
2019.
2019.
Yes, 2019.
Now, in November of that same year, so 1 month prior, right around Thanksgiving, I was out in in the Newmanstown area because I was taking one of Phelps's citizenship courses. And this would have been a month before you came out, but also in the midst of this back and forth, come, don't come. Now, when I got here, I was told by Phelps that Brendan was living at the church house and that they had a fight and that he had, like, literally a day or two before, moved him out of the church house. So by the time we're talking November, December, the time you get in, Brendan's gone, and now you are there, and you are pretty much become Phelps's right-hand man in many senses. wouldn't you say?
Without realising Phelps had a right-hand man, yeah,
Right.
I'm going to be Phelps's right-hand man. Now, interestingly, he did something for Brendan with his property or something like this. There was some kind of an issue with the taxation or something, and he turned it into some kind of a church or something. But he did something for him on the property that he was living in with his mother.
Got it off the tax rolls.
Got
or
it off
something.
the tax roll or something. Yeah. And also, he had a doctor friend who had run into problems with the IRS, and he had him living in Brendan's property, something to that effect. And this gave the man a chance to recover, because medical doctors are kind of, speaking with 20 plus years of experience, they're hermetically sealed, and reality doesn't get to penetrate. So when this man got taken in by the IRS and rolled over by them, he found out that he'd no friends, because, you know, they're so definitive on being perfect people and administering to the rest of us that if something happens to one of their own, they run away for fear it will affect them. So this man was living out on one of Brendan's properties, and Phelps definitely helped him, without a doubt. You know, he did help him. He did help him with his taxes, and he did help him to get his life back together again. So, you know, a lot of the problems that I had with Phelps was I couldn't equate the black and white properly, you know.
Sure. So just for context,
Yeah.
this doctor you're referring to, is this the so-called Dr. Jeff?
Yes.
That was being heard on, which he's not really a medical doctor.
Yeah.
He's not really a medical doctor, but he is a board certified nutritionalist and does know his stuff. But again, doctor is is not an official title for him. But I just wanted to point that out so that people understand that you were around. You've met many of these different characters that have been in and out of this so-called church of Phelps.
And my first Christmas here, we had a lunch in Dutchway, and the doctor guy was there, and there was another guy there that had been in prison, etc. And they were nice men. But it was an eclectic kind of bunch. And I'd been in LA, and I was coming from where I was coming from, and I found, you know, a unity. I perceived a unity in Christ. And, you know, one of the things I would say about EJP, Eric Jon, he always had a favorite expression, and he used to quote from Ephesians. And if I heard this once from him, I heard it 100 times. And I want to put it in here because I want to put my story in perspective. There's no maliciousness here on my part. I'm just telling the story so that others know. And it's Ephesians 5:11, and it says, "And have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them."
Amen.
So I want you to understand that's the basis of that's why I'm telling the story. Because I feel I owe it to others for them to hear the story. And none of us are perfect, and I'm certainly not. But there's something about this story that just doesn't fit with the context of belief.
Of the official narrative.
Yes, definitely not. Definitely not. So thank you so far. You'll have to bring me back on course, buddy. I'll try to.
Yeah, no worries. We're doing great here. Okay. We're moving right along. Okay, so at this point, you're in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. You're out here. You end up moving pretty much full-time living at the church house.
Okay.
In Newmanstown. Talk to me about your experience being around Phelps all the time, and what was your guys' relationship like for that year and a half, 2 years?
Should I explain what happened with the apartment?
Sure, go into that.
Okay, I moved into the apartment the first night, and I just couldn't believe that you could rent a building that had no soundproofing. I could hear a man cough. I could hear the squeak of the mattress he turned. I could see if he was on the toilet, whether he was putting in fluid or other items. And I could hear everything. And it would flow down through the pipes into my apartment. And nothing was sacred. But my first night there, I'm trying to lie, and I can hear a noise upstairs, and I can hear a window open, and it's winter time, and I can hear a chair, and I know the fan has a bearing issue because I can hear the bearing creaking on the fan. And I worked in the PD, and the guy's cooking heroin.
Your neighbor at this apartment in Pennsylvania.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And I asked him to move his car, and he never moved his car, ever. And even when the pod arrived, I couldn't get the pod where I wanted it because whatever. Now, to be fair, EJP was fantastic. I mean, if you wanted to have a guy stand beside you and you were trying to do a pod or trying to empty stuff, or you had gone through a lot of trauma, emotional, whatever it was, he had this ability to just carve right through it. And likewise with his writings. And I have a hand injury from my injury with the job, and I was never good at typing. So he used to type my workers' comp mail and stuff like that for me. And he was quite wonderful. And I don't know if I'm getting off the topic. Am I moving along to?
No, you're fine.
So he would write the stuff to my attorney, and he was a sounding board for me, and I needed that. And he is a perfectionist, to the point where I don't know if it's even good, but he was wonderful for me.
Right. So you ended up moving into the church house.
Well, I told him about it, and he said to me, he says, look, just sleep on the floor of the church. So that's what I did, and I had a sleeping bag, and I just put the sleeping bag. I just put the sleeping bag down, and then I got an air bed, and I put the air bed down. But the church had a macadam outside with little small stones in it, and people would walk in, and they would carry these little small stones in their shoes or whatever, and the air bed would burst. It would be a small pebble, and you'd be lying on it, and eventually it would cut through it. So I went through a couple of air beds. And then after, many, many months, if not even a year, is when you can use the bed. So I put my sleeping bag on the bed.
So, again, for context, at this church house that he has, upstairs there's a full bath with a shower and a full bedroom with, I believe, a queen-size bed in it. Oh, then that's right. And there's another bedroom, a small, like for a kid, next door. So there was a full bedroom, but for the first several months, almost to a year, he had you sleeping on an air mattress instead.
No, it was my air mattress. I was sleeping on the floor.
You're sleeping on the floor. Yeah.
There was no mattress.
No mattress.
I got the mattress.
Yeah. So, but after a while, and after so many air mattresses bursting, he says, "Well, just sleep in the bed."
That's right.
Right. Okay.
So I never felt worthy to sleep in the bed.
Sure.
So I put my sleeping bag on the bed, and I would just get into the sleeping bag. So I never actually slept in the bed. I never pulled the covers down. And the reason for that is that there's a couch downstairs in the church, and his wife knitted something, or somebody knitted something, and it was made of wool, and it covers the couch. And there's no heat in the house from the point of view, there's no cooling in the house, no air conditioning. And it's red brick. And of course, I didn't realize in Pennsylvania the heat of the red brick, it's like an oven, and then it releases that heat at night. It cooks, and then it releases. So I'm washing my clothes, and I'm sitting there in the house kind of empty, and I just have pants on, and I have all my stuff in the washing machine, and I've no top on, I've no vest. And he comes in, and he sees me sitting on the couch with the pants. And of course I'm perspiring. And he goes into a complete berating and outburst over me contaminating his couch by not having clothes. So what I'm describing is something whereby you don't realize it, but you're in the hands of a narcissist and you're being controlled.
And you're just seeing glimpses of it.
And you're getting it bit by bit by bit.
Yeah, little bits.
And then the final thing that he did was he had me upstairs one morning to write some important papers to the attorney. And he berated me for an hour. And then he said, well, let's get on with this. I've scheduled a morning to do this for you. And I told him, I said, I'm sorry, I'm mentally incapable of doing it. And he said, well, if you do not cooperate now that I've set this time apart, or words to that effect, I will never type another word for you. So that's what I ended up having to do. I have to, in a mental mess, trying to
capitulate to his wants and his
and the
desires,
truth of the matter was, he wasn't going to type anything anyway.
Yeah,
he had no intention of typing anymore.
It's manipulation.
Yeah. So the point is that when the case went to court and all that other stuff happened, there was a lot of stuff that I never had. I didn't have support. I hadn't got a working computer where I could actually see on the screen. I was using the phone. He was present, so he could hear it. He could hear what was going on. But I didn't have the level of support I needed.
And this is for your workers' comp disability.
This is my final, this is where my whole life is being wrapped up in this administrative justice, which I didn't understand at all, but obviously he did. And he knew about the presumptions of the court. And he never mentioned any of them to me. And I was completely screwed, blued, and tattooed by the attorney, the lies, the fabrications, the pretense, and I am left with no medical. Now I'm a guy, I'm 100% disabled because of what happened in that job, and I've got no medical. That's the graciousness of the Los Angeles Police Department, and I never had one person call me as to how I am, or how I am emotionally or any other way.
So just so we kind of get the flavor of this, because this will come up again when we talk about one of Phelps's associates. But for this first time, when your workers' comp disability case is getting pretty much reviewed, right? Getting finalized. He's telling you that he can help you. He's telling you, oh, I can do this, we can do this. Basically selling you an idea that he'll take care of everything. Everything's going to be okay.
Well, he knows that I have sent these affidavits of truth because he typed them for me. And I'm very grateful to him, and he did a wonderful job. Whatever he did with typing was fantastic. But I'd sent these affidavits of truth, and they cost like $175 a piece to send them overnight. And there was 3 of them. But my attorney never filed them in the case. Mm-hmm. He just knew somewhere he could file them where they weren't actually in the case, so the judge never even saw them. So the only thing that happened with him was that there was nobody from the city of Los Angeles that would appear at the final hearing for the court. Because they'd all lied, they all knew I knew they'd lied, and they didn't want to be there. So all the faces on the side of the City of Los Angeles Attorney's Office were fresh. Knew nothing about the case. The case had been closed. And my attorney mentioned something, and I said, well, I don't want your son at the case. I want you there. You are my attorney. And he was nervous.
I bet.
And I could pick up, and Phelps could pick up on it. But anyway, the case went forward. The judge seemed pretty nice, but the point is, I know the judge never read the affidavits of truth, because if she had, she couldn't have signed the paperwork. And I didn't understand the administrative side of justice. And now I'm screwed. And a whole new chapter is going to open up after this, insofar as what's actually happening.
Right. Okay. So you get through the finalization of your disability case. Mm. You're living at the church house with Phelps. Well, he lives at another house, but you're living there. You see him very regularly.
I cook for him.
You cook for him. I
provide the groceries.
You're there for every course that is taught there. You're there taking part. So you're around. You're in the mix.
I'm cooking the meals for the students, or if there's a Sunday service and we have people there, I provide the food. He would do the cooking. I provide the wine. I would provide various things. I got boxes of wine. I mean, we're not talking about some Mickey Mouse. I came home with a bottle of wine. We're talking about 8, 9 people sitting down, 10 people sitting down, everybody having plenty, everybody having a nice time, and having the accoutrements from the glasses all the way through to the napkins, all the kind of thing you'd like to put on your table.
But what I'm trying to establish here is the fact that you were his agent. Maybe not officially, but you were his agent by estoppel, meaning by your actions. You may have not been officially appointed.
I protected him.
You protected him. You ran.
If his mailbox needed replacing and the mailbox bill was there, I paid the mailbox.
Look, you checked his mail, right? You ran his errands for him.
Yes, I did.
Right? You ran down to the courthouse for him. You cooked for him.
Yeah.
You helped him in any way you could. So I'm just trying to establish that it was not necessarily a relationship to where you were beneficiary. No. He was beneficiary of everything, correct?
No, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And the point I would make to you is, I suppose I was trained for this, and Phelps realised it. My father abandoned my mother, and he had a year to go to get his big fat pension, and he left her with nothing. Nothing. And in fact, he left her in the hospital having a hysterectomy with 2 black eyes, and that's what I was left with. So I was used to looking after things. Nobody else ever did anything except me. I did it.
Yeah. And you were also his de facto security.
Sure.
Is that correct?
That's right. He took me out one night and we went to a meeting, and there was a guy giving a lecture, and he was a political guy, and it was about concealed carry. And I had a concealed carry form, and I filled it out that night. I went down to the police station in Lebanon, where I filed court papers, and I went downstairs and I handed in the paperwork, and we had a chat, and the guy said to me, he says, "You lived in Compton?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "What's it like?" I said, "I just couldn't describe it to you." And I remember getting that license a couple of days later. So the concept being that I would protect them.
Right. Now, let's talk about what changed. Now, I know it may not have been one particular, it might have been not one particular circumstances, but you told me a story. There was a day, there was something involving some tomatoes at church. And this is where another pivotal point in your relationship with Eric Jon Phelps. Could you tell me about the gifted tomatoes and what happened as a result?
Well, the gifted tomatoes came in at a point in time where I had gone through quite a lot of trauma with Phelps, pulling stunts. And we had a Sunday service, and there was this gentleman who was from Texas. And he had his wife.
He was a firefighter.
He was the fire chief.
Fire chief. There you go.
Fire captain. And he had been up and down before. But now I'm sleeping in the house, and I'm getting the church meals ready on a Sunday. And the heat is incredible. So I would very often get going at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be chopping the tomatoes, and I'd be chopping the salad, and I'd be getting the vinaigrettes together, and I'd be getting the wine glasses together, checking them, making sure they're clean, napkins, tables, knives and forks, all that kind of stuff that just everybody takes for granted. And I would have all that stuff, and I'd be working on it. And I would be working in my underpants or something because of the heat.
Because of how hot it was, yeah.
So the church service is until 11 or something. So lo and behold, who turns up with his wife, and me covered in sweat, only this guy from Texas. And I have an Irish temper, buddy. I have to put a suppression on it. The new man versus the old man. And he came in, and I just thought to myself, for you to arrive an hour and a half early or an hour and 15 minutes early ahead of church is just a hell of a liberty, and whatever. And it wasn't my first instance with this guy showing a certain degree of uncaring or a certain degree of like, I'm special and you're just here to do. He had that servant master thing. And I worked in LAPD, and yeah, I worked in some of the crazier sections. And the stuff I'm coming to is this. I didn't have words for how I felt. So he came in and he had the stuff, and he has these tomatoes, and they're kind of, some of them are even sort of, they're red, but there's green in them, you know. They're rock hard. And he's bringing them in, I want you to have them for lunch and whatever. And I said to him, well, you don't need to, because we're not having them for lunch. I said, I've already chopped everything. I said, you know, I'm processing, I'm trying to get the food ready.
Yeah, you're
so I can go up and get ready for church.
Sure.
Because I have to shower, put a fresh shirt, look like, you know, I didn't do nothing except fix my nails. And that's the rigor, that's how it is. So he says something. I said, look, just take the tomatoes with you when you're going back to Texas and eat them. I don't have any place for them.
Yeah.
Now Phelps arrives over earlier than normal, and he comes in and he senses that something is not right. So to be fair to the Texas guy, I don't think he said that to him, but he senses it. And we do the service, we do the whole thing, and I remember the guy bought himself a Mercedes-Benz. It was his first time in a Mercedes, so maybe that was what brought Phelps in, that he saw the car or whatever. But anyway, Monday morning he's on the radio, and he comes in early, and I'm up, and he comes in the door, and it's, you know, I don't think it's even 8 o'clock. And he comes into the church, and he says to me, waving his finger, pointing it, you don't go anywhere. You and I are going to have words after this broadcast. I'm going to have a serious talk to you. And it's very threatening and very intimidating and all the rest of it. And then he just whizzes out. So he finishes the radio around 12 o'clock. And right enough, he comes in. And he has a certain swagger. You know, Eric, he's got a certain walk. He studied martial arts, and he has a certain, you know, way of moving. And he came in, and I'm sitting at the table, and I got my back to the wall, and he's coming forward. And he comes over, and he stands behind one of his chairs, and he has his fingers on the chair, and he's, you know, he's kind of smiling, and he's kind of friendly, and he wants to get himself to sit down. And he starts to pull the chair. And he has said something to me. Can't remember exactly what it was. And out of my mouth come these words. I don't know where they came from. I've had this experience before in court, where the words just come out. I don't know where they came from. But the words that I spoke to him were, are you the final arbitrator of perfection?
Now, this whole episode, you found out, was directly because of the guy from Texas and the tomatoes.
Oh yes, because he was concerned that I had refused to give the tomatoes, that I had compromised them.
Yeah, and you had caused a rift.
And that's what he's saying
them.
as he's walking over to touch the chair. He's talking about me refusing an offering that wasn't for me, it was for him, and I had no right to refuse it. And I responded with, sitting down, and he's standing up. Well, are you the final arbitrator of perfection?
And what happened after that?
Well, the Jesuits are the Society of the Perfect, right? And, you know, the idea that he is perfect. And he took his hand off the chair as if it was burning him. And he went a funny colour in his face, and it was like there was steam I couldn't see coming out of his ears. And he turned, and he did this swagger walk, and out the door he went, of the church. And I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking, where did those words come
Yeah. Yeah.
So I sit with that for maybe a minute or two, and then I get up and I go for the door to see where he is. And he's gone out and he's walking around the front of the church, and he's going to turn on Bethany. And I go over where there's a little gate midway on.
Now he's gone out of the gate. He's gone to the road. So he's trying to walk off. Whatever you say to him, he needs to walk it off.
His brains are scrambled now. He's no longer in control of anything. So I'm standing at the middle gate where I can get out onto the street there, Zellers. And he's now turning on Bethany. And he's got the cowboy hat on. And he's got the jeans and he's got the boots, cowboy boots. And I see the hat in the air with no head in it. I see his feet up in the air, the cowboy boots. And he's hitting the road. And I'm like, what am I looking at? So I open the gate and I start to run around. Now he picks himself up and he gets down Bethany, and there's a gate there I didn't know about, and he's coming in the side of Bethany by the gas tank. And I'm trying to follow him, and he leaves the door, and I'm there and I have to close it. And I'm going up the hill on the grass, and I said, I hope you don't blame me for falling. And he starts to giggle, and he gets into the garage and he closes the door. He's just trying to get away from you.
So as he goes to walk off, the comment that you made to him, he steps out onto the road, which was probably iced.
No, it's summer.
Oh, it was summer. So he's walking on the road in his cowboy boots. He slips.
The legs go completely from under him. He reminds me of Toy Story, because there used to be the cowboy in the Toy Story movie with the hat and the boots and the thin legs and the jeans. And that's exactly what I was looking at. It was like a cartoon.
And he just fell right on his ass.
That's right. And he suffers, even to this day, with that injury.
That lower back, I'm sure.
That's right.
Okay, so before we get off the gifted tomatoes, let's go back to this firefighter. There was a comment that you've made to me in the past that I want to bring back up, because I've had my encounters with this clown online as well.
Just the color purple.
Yeah.
Okay.
So tell me about the time when the fire chief was visiting, and you were asked to do his laundry.
Yeah. Well, those whom the gods wish to destroy, they first make mad. And I mention this because this is a disturbing little story. It's kind of funny, but it's kind of below the belt. I was asked to handle the story, or handle the washing for him. And I don't mind doing that. But I got his washing, and he had tongs for underpants, and they were purple. And I suppose the vision never left me.
Scarred for life.
Yeah. And I really couldn't hold it in. So I told you the story. But that's just a perspective on the craziness of...
Right. Now, to some people listening, they might say, well, that's neither here nor there, but we're just trying to give you the full flavor of the type of characters that get involved with Eric Jon Phelps. Yeah.
Well,
not all of them, but a good number of them.
You're expected to try to control your baser instincts. You know, we all have them, and we all fail, and we're all miserable, and there's nobody's better than the other guy, and there's nothing that someone has done that we're not capable of doing. I mean, that's the grace of God and the power of the Spirit. And you submit yourself to it to the very best of your ability, because that's the only way you can live your life and serve the good Lord. But for him, in his 50s, going 60s, to be wearing purple thong underpants, there's a disconnect. And
Definitely.
what does the Bible say about your sins are so far away, your sins are oceans away, or something? I am all the oceans away from being able to comprehend it, other than I just couldn't believe what I was looking at.
It's quirky. It's one of many things around that just don't seem to fit. You try to categorize things and put them in a place that makes sense, but you get a lot of that in this. Things that don't really fit, but are there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People that are from backgrounds that are not Christian. Mm-hmm. That's not to say they're not saved or whatever, but there's a need. I think the church has a need for controversial people to be associated with it. I think it's meant to give it a flavor or something.
Sure.
But the bottom line is that nobody stays in the context of the church, and how things are going to evolve in the church are going to be interesting, in as much as it's going to depict even more graphically some of the stuff I've touched on.
Okay, so now let's move forward in our little chronological timeline here. After the gifted tomatoes, after Phelps falls, tell me about what happens shortly thereafter.
Well, the wife has gone away to Colorado for at least 2 to 2.5 years and stayed away for an extended period of time. And it appears that there's some kind of a division between EJP and the wife. Mm-hmm. And I try to make it my business not to get involved with people's wives, because in my experience, you end up being a dartboard for both the parties if there's malevolence of any type there, and you're not in a position to defend yourself. So I cooked for Phelps. I made sure if Phelps was working late, I'd make him a sandwich, pastrami, whatever it was he liked. And I looked after him on the basis of the fact I wasn't sure he'd necessarily get fed when he went home. So I looked after him like he was my child, Mm-hmm. And as I said, that came to me because I ended up in a situation in my life where I had to do things that children don't necessarily have to do. So it made me a good servant. And that was my Achilles heel for somebody like Phelps, because he could exploit it to the maximum. And of course I didn't realise what I was dealing with. I mean, I got glimpses of it.
Sure.
But I couldn't put the whole package together.
So, shortly after he falls, then he comes up to you a day or two later. Now, the wife is back in town.
No, she's not back yet.
Or not back yet. She's coming back.
She's coming back.
She's arriving back.
And he tells me that, I need to get a new place. You
can't stay at the church anymore.
Well, he's kind of going down that road. And I'm taken aback by it. I'm really not... I stay out of the marriage. I stay out of the connection. I try to keep distance. I look after him. Mm-hmm. Now, it crossed my mind later that maybe he's going back to her and telling her what a great meal I made him and how much I did because he's trying to make her jealous. I don't know. But the point about it is that he's definitely not benevolent towards me. He's using me. So the situation is that, we need to get another place. And I got this place here. And I want you to come and look at it. So it's like he pulls up in the car, come on, let's go. And we end up at this place and looking at it. And there's a man across the road, and we get talking to him. We get a little bit more knowledge and actually get him to look at the place and whatever. And he's real keen on it. And I said to him, it's really nice. But I said, I can't afford it. Mm-hmm. No. So he's down there and he's on his computer, and the next day, and it's more and more of this, we need that. And I said to him, you need to realize something. I've got this place in LA I'm paying for, and I have all these other expenses. And I said, I'm paying rent on another place that I'm not living in because I can't handle the people upstairs. And I kind of need a certain degree of peace because I'm not, I can't be around chaos. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to be around chaos. And he has my driver's license. And he knows how to do things I don't know how to do. Like he knew how to digitize the license. So when I got the first rental agreement, he digitized the license and sent it to him. So he had it on his computer. And it's the same outfit that are going to be handling the rental on this one as the previous one. Mm-hmm. And he's on about it and on about it. And I said to him, and I told him, I said, I just can't. I won't be able to afford it. Mm-hmm. And you see, on that workers' comp thing, I lost $600 every 4 weeks. I lost $600 every 4 weeks. Yeah. And the attorneys just whacked that out of his fee and didn't make any adjustment on the payments. So I was injured in the 90s. So, the whole thing is,
Well, you don't have to explain why you couldn't afford it. The simple fact was you couldn't afford it.
He knew all this,
but
because there was no secrets.
And Phelps felt he pushed the issue.
So Phelps is there anyway, and I don't fully comprehend that he's under the gun of Denita.
Right, from the wife.
Now, Denita's a very nice woman, but she doesn't use his name in her papers.
Well, they're not married. Not legally.
Right. Well, let's say they're married in the eyes of the church. His church.
Yeah.
But the point is, his phone has laser on it and whatever. So he doesn't use his own name. But I didn't put it together that she was issuing the ultimatum. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't realize that she actually owned everything.
She owns that church building.
Everything.
That's correct. Yeah.
Everything. Yeah. He owns nothing.
Nothing in his name.
But I didn't comprehend that. Mm-hmm. So from his perspective, I'm moving whether I like it or not. I just don't know it.
Well, that's because the order came down from boss.
That's right.
Yeah.
And he hits the button and he says, "That's it." And I said, "How?" He said, "Don't worry about it. I'll pay the rent." Now, let me put this in context. Mm-hmm. There's a transition taking place in the church. Mm-hmm. Where we're moving from a religious service into another form of religion. Banking.
More financial based religion. Yeah.
And he has told me that he will get me a place.
He would buy you a house.
That's
is what
right.
he told you.
That's right. That's right. And if he said it once, he said it 100 times. And if he signed 100 bills or one bill of exchange, he signed 100 because he would say to me, "I need you to pray for this one, I need you to pray for that one, I need you to pray for whatever." And I would.
We'll get back, let's get through the timeline and then we'll circle back to a lot of this other stuff.
Okay.
So,
all right.
So you move, the main point that I wanted to touch on though is the fact that this house that you live in now, he signed the lease in your name over the computer without your consent.
That's right.
And then, once it was said and done, you told him again, "I cannot afford it," and he said, "Oh, don't worry, I'll pay for the rent." Mm-hmm. And at the same time, telling you, "I'm going to buy you a house."
Oh, yes.
Or he's going to buy you this house or some house.
Multiple times before he hit the button on the rent. So I want you to understand from my perspective how I'm seeing it. He has talked about buying me a house, he's promised to buy me a house, he's going to buy me a house, it's just a matter of time, blah, 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 blah. And I've listened to it so many times I'm blue in the face. And when he says, "Well, I'll pay the rent," I thought, "Well, fine, you pay the rent while I'm waiting for you to buy the house." And that's how I mentally handled it from my perspective.
Yeah.
I thought, well, no big deal. It's only a big deal from my peon visage of it. But for him, with all his knowledge, it's nothing.
Yeah, at the stroke of a pen, he could
that's
buy
right.
He could purchase.
So that's why I allowed it to happen.
Yeah.
Hope that clarifies.
Oh no. Very, very much so. And then that brings us to how you and I actually got introduced to one another. So around the same time as he is getting you this house, I get a phone call I believe he was in the car with you at the time, because I remember speaking to you, and and the phone call, he's telling me that, oh, you can move out here, Harrison, to Pennsylvania. I'm getting this house. I've got a roommate, and basically wanted me to stay here with you and basically help pay the rent. Yes. So this is how I got introduced to you in the first place, is that Eric Jon Phelps introduced us. So if it was not for Phelps, you and I would have never met.
That's correct.
We would have talked on the phone.
Yeah.
Would have never, I probably would have never even known about you.
Mm-hmm.
So all this, this years later, us finally getting together and meeting is really a culmination of events that were really kicked off by Phelps himself.
Absolutely.
So it's all kind of poetic in the end, how things come around and work out.
The Lord works in mysterious ways.
Amen.
And he weaves all things for good. And basically, I think that's what has happened. Yeah.
Now, we had talked before, and even though this, when he called me and you were in the car with him,
Yes.
he gave me your phone number,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe we ended up speaking later that afternoon. But
Yeah.
you had told me that you have, over the years, had been in many car rides with him,
Mm-hmm.
where he would talk to people on his speakerphone in the car and act like he was alone, having very intimate conversations, but in fact, you were there the whole time listening. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
So, that's pretty, wouldn't you say that's a bit of a breach of confidence to whoever's on the other line, talking to a pastor, thinking they've got some kind of, confessional, secret, between the two of them.
Well, the book tells us, guard your ears and your eyes, and I always tried not to be there. Even though I was in the car, I tried mentally not to be there. Mm-hmm. I felt it was a violation. And it made me aware of the fact that EJ has no real inhibition.
Right.
And I didn't understand narcissism. I mean, I dealt with it. My father was something where my mother would be ready to go and we'd be waiting on him. He'd be up in the bathroom. So the old mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all, and
Sure.
answering your own reflection. There's demonic content to this. This isn't just something that you're kind of prideful. A whole bunch of things going on here. And, to be fair to Phelps, I believe that he suffered as a child. I believe he went through certain crises and suffered at the hands of adults, and that created this separation between reality and what he perceives as reality.
He was traumatized.
Yes, I think so. And, I'm not making excuses for him. You'd say that Stalin was traumatized probably, and Mao, and all the other major wipers of humanity, people that just murdered so many people. They all had some issue.
Right. What you're given is not an excuse, it's an explanation.
Yeah, it's an explanation. It's an explanation. So the guy can't help himself, so you need to understand it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so before we move on into more particulars, there's one other story, or let's say Phelps legend, we could call it at this point, that you were actually a part of. And that is cutting down the tree at the big house, at the main house.
Yeah.
Now, if you would, talk a little about your role as far as you just being there, and then kind of the aftermath of what happened.
I don't know very much about chainsaws other than be real careful because you lose your fingers. I had a good friend of mine who used to do some tree felling in Georgia. And he experienced where he felled a tree and the root of this tree came up and the ground beneath his feet opened up. And he got swallowed into the ground and the root of the tree came down on top of him. Mm-hmm. And he was like underneath the tree. No one could see him. Mm-hmm. And he was a guy that was careful. And he was a guy of knowledge. And anything he ever showed me how to do, I was able to do it pretty much immediately. He was that good an instructor. So trees and chainsaws are even more frightening to me because of the fact that I'm aware of that particular instance happened to this particular guy. Mm-hmm. So Phelps had me come over, and I remember it because I had a good pair of British shoes that I paid quite a lump of money for. They were nice, they were real leather shoes, and they were slip-ons. And I was helping him, and we were up on the roof, and we were doing things on the roof, trying to move some bits and pieces. And I was limited in what I could do. But I do remember having this plank, which was like maybe 2 inches thick, and it had to be maybe 8 foot to 10 foot in length. And I have it, and I'm holding it up to him, and he's up on the roof, and he's lifting it. And I'm trying to feed it up to him. And it slipped, and it came down on my new shoe with my foot in it, and I lost my toenail, and I bled. And the shoe's a different colour ever since, but it was a brand new shoe. So it's one of the things I remember. Mm-hmm. And also not having proper safety gear.
Right.
That he's got boots and all the rest, and I don't have anything. And I wouldn't put somebody in danger like that. But the point is that it probably never crossed his mind. But the point is I was in a certain amount of danger. So the cutting of the tree was a rather large tree, and there were trees that were allowed to grow on the property that shouldn't have been allowed to grow on the property. And this particular tree was in proximity to the house, and it hadn't been cut down. So the tree is there, and the tree is not a fresh tree. The tree is kind of dead, and it's not being cut, but it should have been cut much earlier. And I say that with the benefit of hindsight because I don't know very much about trees. So a rope was set up and a wheel for the rope to run through.
A pulley, yeah.
Pulley. And the pulley was directed down into a field, and I had the 6-cylinder Dodge truck down there, which was Eric's. And my job was, when I got the shout, to hit the accelerator, so the engine running, and I have it like in gear, or ready to go into gear, and then hit the accelerator, and just pull that tree that extra few inches away, so there's no chance of us hurting the building. Well, what happens is Eric's cutting it, I can't see what's going on, I'm waiting for the shout, and there's a crack, a noise of a crack, and then Eric shouts, and then I get her in gear and I hit her. But the tree was rotten on the inside and it broke prematurely. So Eric wasn't in control of it after it snapped. And by the time he shouted to me, I moved the truck rapidly, got tension on it and pulled it. But not enough for it to clear. So what it did was it scraped the side of the house. It didn't take the wall down. If I hadn't have been there and I hadn't hit the accelerator the way I did, it would have gone right through the wall, right in through the roof of the house.
Yeah.
It glanced a sideways blow and it did damage, but it didn't shatter or damage the interior of the property. There was damage, but it was much less than what it could have been. Now, it didn't look pretty, but that was the way it went.
But it didn't destroy the house. But it did significant damage to a part of the roof, correct?
Oh yes, yeah. So the thing about it is that the roof was there, and the roof had issues before. The roof wasn't exactly perfect. There were skylights and things like that, and there seemed to have been some leaks on the skylights. But this particular thing certainly didn't help the roof, so now the roof had serious problems. So there was going to be leaks into the house on this particular corner of the property. So apparently he took pictures of it, and I wanted to go home because my foot was killing me. And I couldn't take my foot out of the shoe because I wouldn't be able to get the shoe back on again. And I got in my vehicle and I left with his permission, etc. And then he taken certain photographs and he went to bed.
Well, what did he do with those photographs before he went to bed?
Well, I didn't know what he was doing, but what happened was I started getting numerous phone calls. And these phone calls were from Danita, and she was out of town. She was I think she was in Colorado. And it was one phone call, followed by another phone call. And there was messages, and she was kind of frantic. And I realized he had taken the pictures of the damage and sent them to her and gone to bed, and she couldn't get to talk to him. And in the interest of self-preservation, I thought the best thing I should do was not talk to her.
Well, you didn't want to feel the brunt.
Yeah, so I never called her back. I mean, God forgive me, but it wasn't my place.
No, it wasn't.
And obviously she's frantic, and I can understand that. But I just knew this wasn't my place. And quite frankly, I didn't have, frequent phone calls from Danita from the perspective of having a friendship or having, a relationship.
Right.
My relationship was strictly with DJP, and, I knew Danita, and Danita knew me, and we were friendly and all the rest of it, but there was a separation between church and state.
Sure.
And I liked it like that.
And the reason why I wanted you to go into the detail of what happened with the tree damaging the roof is because Eric Phelps told this story on his 24/7 World Radio show a couple different times. And then in one of the iterations, he claimed that insurance was going to pay for the new roof. Now, as soon as I heard that, and at this time I'm still a supporter of his, I knew that was BS. Because you can't get roof insurance for that. That's why you hire a professional tree feller, and if anything damages your roof, their insurance covers the roof. You can't, so I knew that was a lie. And the reason, and we'll get to this in a little bit, is why would he be lying about the insurance is because he can't tell you where the money is really coming from to fix the roof. So he tells you the insurance is going to cover it.
Yeah, well, I'm with you there. And I mean, in my mind, when I think back and I thought to myself, boy, I should buy a derelict property and make sure I have it insured with the same company he's got it insured with.
Sure. Yeah.
And I did have insurance with this company. And interestingly enough, a year or two later, I'm actually down there and I have someone with me who's got a problem with the same insurance company, but just another operator. And I brought this guy with me to the insurance company I'm with. And I'm trying to have them take his insurance and put it in with their operator, their manager guy. And they're not keen to do that. Mm-hmm. And the conversation gets kind of heated. And I can be blunt at times. So I was kind of the person that was vocal about this other man and how they should really try and help him, but they weren't interested. So later I was back in the office, and the manager guy, the male guy, was there, the senior guy, and he said, "Oh, come in to me, Eric, come in." So I went in and we were talking there, and he says to me, he says, "Oh, this is a couple of years later." He said, "I was out," he said, "this morning with a good friend of yours." And I said, "Yeah?" He said, "I was over with Eric Jon Phelps." I said, "At the house?" He said, "Oh, yeah." "Oh," I said, "you're taking out the insurance on the new roof." And he says, "No." Well, I knew now that this was all bullshit, and I knew it before it started, but this was the opportunity to, 2 seconds and bang, we'll get credibility here. We'll find out the truth. And I just regarded that as all part of something where EJP had asked him to mention him to me in context of his controlling interest in my welfare and my stuff. And then me turning that situation around into, oh, about his new roof? You're insuring it again, great. Well, oh no. And then I got a picture of just how structured the lies are.
Yeah.
But at no point did he ever indicate that the insurance company wasn't paying. The first year the roof wasn't fixed. The second year the roof wasn't fixed. Well, now it's kind of fixed, but it wasn't right. The third year the roof is being refixed again. And it just, that song, Everybody's Blowing Bubbles.
Sure.
And that's the best way I can describe some of the stories that I got from him.
Yeah.
And certainly, we're talking about a pastor here. We're talking about someone who has charge of your spiritual welfare, at least who you should believe has. And for me, it was psychologically devastating.
Sure.
It wasn't just an instant psychological devastation. It was a granular one whereby more and more weight came, more and more weight came, more and more weight came to the ultimate point of collapse. Incredibility.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a good springboard, this conversation that we're having right now about just small little lies that he would tell. Because again, what does it matter if insurance is going to cover the roof or not? Why lie about that unless you have convinced everybody that you have no money, that you are poor, that you are the only money you have is through the support of parishioners, donors. But in fact, there is money. And the reason why you lie is to cover up the money that is there, that is not coming from donations, from supporters, from the radio broadcast. And so I want to use this as a springboard to show that this is not the only time that he has lied about anything. There's been numerous times. And I want to start pointing out some other contradictions, things that we were told in the past and then told other things at different times. So let's segue now into his private citizenship courses. Now, you were there from the beginning of the courses. You had a very unique position in that when you moved out here, you were around.
I was in the room.
You were in the room
where he's teaching.
Why he's teaching other people there to help.
And I had contact
Yeah.
with the students.
Yeah.
And I would cook the meals. So when you arrived in and you went to the class at 8 o'clock in the morning, I was there. For certain students, sometimes that had financial difficulty or whatever, I'd cook them a breakfast. It wasn't something I did for everybody, but I would. If it was necessary, I would do it. And I would then cook the lunch. And in the course of cooking the lunch, the class is taking place. And in fact, I have come up with the board concept of how to be able to resurrect a board that would take all the audio visual without disturbing all the other paraphernalia that used to have to be taken down and put away, so that the screen could be operational. And I had done certain things, and I also took care of the altar. The altar had a blue cover on it, and it was a blue cloth, a very nice sky blue, royal blue colour with yellow. And I just thought over time, as I began to pay attention to it, it had a lot of suns on it, and I thought, really this is kind of not proper. I didn't, claim to understand Baal worship, but the point is there was some similarity between the emblems on the cloth. and it could be construed. So I bought a proper white linen cloth and clips, and I brought them down and we covered it all up. And the cloth was white, it was mercerized, very thick cotton, and Eric clipped them all together, so he had a nice white altar and he had his books or whatever on it. But so the thing I'm coming to is that I had an intimacy with not just cooking, but always had an intimacy with his preaching and an intimacy in the prep and in the teaching of the class. And in my naivete, I would notice in the class that sometimes he would not teach the class that I was used to teaching. And I might interject something to what I thought bring him back on course. And he would let off a certain aura to me, which didn't seem like he liked it. And being a bit slow, I never thought to myself, well, he's got a course for everybody.
Right.
I thought, well, he's just got a bit more knowledge here, and he would have got the bit that I was telling him to remind him of.
Yeah,
but I was just doing it because, you know, we can all ramble off the subject. There's nobody better at it than me. So the point I'm making to is, I was not doing anything untoward. I was assisting him as far as I was concerned.
Yeah.
But over a period of time, I began to realize he didn't want me there.
Yeah.
Because with him, anybody or anything that will detract from him being Lord and Master and all things bright and beautiful is not to be tolerated when there's an audience. So
he's the central attraction.
yeah, even at a church service where he would omit something really important, and I don't know very much, but I do remember things he would say, and I would remember the gravitas of something he'd say, and he omitted it, I'd hike up, and he'd turn around and he'd say, "Oh, thank you so much. How did I ever forget to mention that? Thank you." And then he would go on and he would mention it in great detail. But when everybody was gone, he would say to me, "Don't ever do that again." So the truth was secondary.
Yeah. It was more about the show, the presentation of himself,
now, these are
rather
church,
than
these are
the
church,
information itself.
These are church services. Now, this is going to spill into the courses. But the first show is the rejection of truth in the preaching or omission. And then I give him the information, and then he praises me publicly and privately corrects me. So I'm paying attention now to acts of omissions.
Sure.
And that's what's happening with the courses.
Well, since me and you have become friends, we have talked at great length about this subject, and we have compared notes, and seeing how both you and I got involved with Phelps in taking his courses right about 10 years ago, around 2015, that time, we have come to the understanding and the realization that the older the courses were, the more truth that they had in them. Because the older courses were surrounded, specifically around 2015, 2016, when Phelps got his state decree. His courses after that were geared toward getting every single student their own decree. Now, can you talk to me about that time in California after Phelps got his decree? When you would go to these classes, what were the moods like in the classes?
Well, number one, he had quite a dynamic following, and I would say that a lot of them were not attracted by the Word of God or the Bible, or in any way inhibited by the Word of God. They liked his idea of being free. And a lot of this freedom was based on financial abilities, things that would pay off, that was outside the realm of reality unless you went to Disney movies. So he attracted a group that were, quite a few of them were not Christians.
Sure. I mean, let's just be open about this. There were times where there were large sums of money being discussed by Phelps and one of his fellow teachers.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Where people were being told that they had large amounts of money waiting for them, and that the first person to get through the door is going to do this, this, and this financially for all the people and help them along the way. So in a very real sense, yes, freedom, but it was more not necessarily for you personally, but for most of the people attending these classes. Would you say that greed was the motivator?
Oh, without a doubt, unbridled, and it was encouraged in as much as I recall certain people whoever gets through the fence first will help all the others. Whoever gets their decree first will help everybody else. Everybody will be fine. We just need one to get through, and then this will happen, and then I'll do this for you, and you'll do that for me, and we'll all benefit together. And it wasn't just one or two people. There was quite a few. And some of them are still associated with this guy. One of them happens to be a banker. So
money was the motivating factor.
without a doubt, and also a desire internally to emancipate yourself on top of the others. In other words, you got that George Stephanopoulos who's on the TV for years, and he was a good-looking man when he started. But I always used to christen him George Step on Top of Us. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of people that were prepared to step on top of whoever.
Sure.
And there was a lot of stories, and there was a lot of what I believe was filler.
Lies.
And how I came to that conclusion wasn't because of superior knowledge, but there's tell signs. And one is that whatever document you're given has bits missing, or omissions, or let's correct this. Oh, well, I meant for it to be 14 pages, but there's actually only 9. I left the other ones at home. Constantly. And then great stories about musky fishing.
Well, let's get into that little aspect of it, because...
And venom.
Let's get into that aspect. Let's talk about these fishermen.
Yeah.
There was a gentleman who was on let's call it the teaching guru circuit, teaching these courses with our friend Eric Jon Phelps.
Oh, yeah.
And he went by the name Edward Rourke. I'm not going to say his last name, but I know your first name, Eddie. And
I used to call him Oxford Lunch.
Oxford Lunch. And tell me about your experience with Rourke.
Well, I went to a class in Ventura, and I used to drive from Long Beach to Ventura, be Compton, and it's a hell of a drive. And I would leave very early in the morning, like 4 o'clock or whatever, and I'd be driving out in the mist, because Ventura was near the ocean, and there'd be this mist that would come in on the ground, like kind of tooly fog. It's much worse up north, further. But this was a class in Ventura, and I was at several classes. Well, this particular one, when I arrived, Rourke hadn't arrived yet, and Rourke was coming to the airport on a Friday of all days, in LA. And of course, being who I am, I'm going now to forfeit my day at the course, and I'm going to drive to LAX to pick up Rourke.
To chauffeur this man. Yeah.
That's right, to Ventura in the traffic on a Friday afternoon. And I'm assured that Rourke knows I have a car of a certain colour and it's easy to see, and that I will be in a certain area, and that I don't know what he looks like, but that he needs to come out and he needs to be there, and yada, 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 yada. And there shouldn't be any problem at all. Mm-hmm. And of course, there will be all kinds of problems, because Rourke will not follow instructions. And if you're doing a good turn, you're just a peon, because Rourke would never do a good turn unless you were a Jesuit. Mm-hmm. and good turns are just not in his repertoire.
Sure.
So in my innocence, here I am again on this fool's errand, and I'm there in the airport, and he doesn't come, and my light's on, and the cars are moving on, moving off, it's really busy. And I move around, and I drive around, and I come back in again, and I get back up there again, and he's still not there, and there must be like half an hour, 45 minutes, and in the end, I decide, screw this, and I pull out, and I'm heading away, and there's an island in the middle of the road. There's a guy standing there, and I'm thinking to myself, this couldn't possibly be Rourke.
Yeah.
But I roll my window down, and I said, Rourke. And he runs around, he throws his bag in the back. I'm stopped in the road, traffic. And he hops in, and I take off with the stick shift, and the first thing he does is starts adjusting the cooling system. So, there's not much more you need to know.
Sure. Tells you how much respect he has.
So would you like to
property.
eat?
Yeah.
So I said, would you like to eat? No, no, no. So away we go. And of course, it takes forever to get to Ventura. And as we're getting close to Ventura, there's a town coming up, and there's restaurants. And Rourke says, stop, stop, I want to eat. So we go to this Italian restaurant. It's the Soup Bowl or something like this. You know, it's one of these Italian chain things. And I don't have teeth because I lost my teeth on the job, and I'm not comfortable eating with people because of my teeth. And I was promised a complete rebuild, but you know, when you have good attorneys working for you, you'll find out that nothing really means anything, and you ain't getting nothing because nothing's what's on the menu. Yeah. They're getting it all, but you're getting nothing. So I was uncomfortable eating with Rourke, but we got in anyway, and Rourke's sitting at the table, and Rourke addresses the waitress. I get the menu, and it's the lunch menu. So I try to pick something that's not difficult to eat. And when she comes back, he says, could I have the dinner menu?
Yeah.
So he gets the dinner menu, and then he orders the dinner he wants for him. Well, you know, you can eat crackers. You know.
Right. Because you're paying for it, of course.
Well, I don't think I am paying for it. I don't think I am. I don't think I would have the capacity to pay for it under the circumstances. Well, I might have intended to pay for it, but that's not going to happen.
It was more like only the best for him.
Oh, well, he had the dinner. Yeah. So I'm looking at him, and he's been to Oxford. And one of the things you know about Oxford, because I had friends that went to Oxford, and they always told me that they had lesser degrees from Oxford, but they never went for an interview where anybody talked about the higher level degree. They all wanted to talk about whatever degree they got in Oxford and find out about Oxford. Oxford had this. And I'm looking at Rourke, and I've got a tooth problem, and I'm kind of conscious of how I'm eating, etc. And I'm watching him. And I start to giggle internally because I just know that he couldn't have gone to Oxford and eat like he's eating.
Sure.
No finesse.
Yeah.
And he's totally abandoned because I'm such a peon that there's no need to impress me in any, you know, do whatever you like.
Sure.
Right. So I got a revelation of him.
Yeah. First impression.
Oh yeah, had him down to a T. And I even told Eric, I said, you know, you really ought to pay attention. This guy is not the kind of guy that you want around you. But the next day we're having the class, and the room is jammed. Now I've already lost a day, and I've gone to considerable expense to do all this. You know, he's paying me to do all this extra stuff.
Sure, you volunteered.
And I'm driving home at night as well. Yeah. They're going to the hotel, and I'm another 3 hours driving, and I'm up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to get back in time.
Yeah,
I'm exhausted.
Going from Compton to Ventura.
Yeah. And in the end, I'm going to drive them all to the airport. I'm going to have to drive them all to the airport. But, to get back to the story, the class is there, and he's doing his talking, and he's talking about his muskie, and he's talking about his class, and he's talking about the paper he's provided, and there's bits of it missing. And then he says something that's completely out of context with what he thinks he said.
Mm-hmm.
And I put my hand up and I told him that this couldn't be true or something to that effect. And his response was, now this is the first time I'm talking to him in the class. Maybe you're just not intelligent enough to be in the class.
Mm-hmm.
And I put my pen down and started to move around the desk in his direction.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody in the class started roaring and saying, no, you said this.
Yeah.
He's not lying. You said it. And EJP is up, he's trying to cover the ground, and the whole thing turns into chaos.
Yeah.
So that was Rourke.
Well, I can tell you, I never met Eddie, but the first time I met Phelps and I took his course, which was the end of 2015, 2006, or late 2015, I believe. When I was there, I didn't meet Rourke, but he told me, that is Phelps, told me a lot about him. And he showed me this mini little course book that Rourke had printed up.
With the insect on it.
Yeah, it was like a fish on the front or
Yeah,
something like that.
Some kind of an insect that was in water.
Yeah.
Bluey cover, and it looked like a fish tank or something.
Yeah, it was not a very thick book, but Eric gave me a copy and we started flipping through it, and he is, now mind you, ranting about Eddie Rourke and saying all this guy cares about is money. All he cares about is money. Look at this stuff. He's trying to say that when the doctor takes your umbilical cord, that is how you become a slave, and all this complete, utter patriot guru bullshit. Laying it on super thick. And Phelps knows this, but yet is still teaching classes with him, because what he told me is, when I go to these classes, the people don't even want to hear me. They just want to hear Rourke and all his wild theories. They don't want to hear what I have to say. And all he cares about is the money. But yet, it wasn't until months, if maybe not a year later, that he cut him off.
Well,
but it had nothing. It wasn't an ideological split. It was
a monetary thing.
It was a financial thing.
Exactly.
Who's getting the bigger percentage?
Well, Rourke had no shame, so Rourke was taking everything. And I think for EJP, that was unforgivable, because EJP was not going to give everything to anybody.
Well, that's the cardinal sin.
Yeah, so the thing is that these things will become apparent later. But I think that the Rourke situation was one that I can demystify in some ways. One of the things he had was he had some contractual businesses with Iraq, and he was providing electrical generators. So that indicated to me he was part of the industrial war complex. He spoke about his father being so brilliant, he just decided not to work anymore. And he talked about being brought to Oxford and about the Jesuits making him take certain courses. And it was just a phantasmagorical litany. And I suppose if you'd lived in Los Angeles all your life and you were a Hollywood movie buff, you know, this was just the stuff the scripts are made of.
So would you say it would be right to categorize Rourke and Eric as greedy narcissists? Were they two peas in a pod in that regard?
Yeah, there's another party that will come into the conversation in a while, and it will give a greater indicator. But I see them as a carousel. And in the carousel, there's carriages that are at the top, and there's carriages that are descending, that will rise again, and there's carriages that will rise, depending on where they are in the carousel. And I see EJP as the guy at the very highest point of the carousel. and everybody else is sniping for to be there. And what Eric's got is he's got knowledge. He's access to knowledge. And he is a guardian of that knowledge. And he's not imparting the knowledge. He is twisting it to create cloud, where yes, I've said that, but I also said something else, and you cannot decipher the truth. So there is truth in it, no doubt about it, and I don't regret taking the course, but I would say that having gone to Catholic school, you're not going to be told what you need to know.
Let me ask you the question this way. When you, as a student, get done taking Eric's course, are you dependent on him for your basic understanding? I mean, what I'm asking is, do students come out of these classes really grasping what it is that they are learning? Is 3 days enough to learn this information?
All right. I got up and I moved out here because I believed in what Phelps was teaching. And the bits I didn't understand, I put it down to my own lack of ability. But I felt, if you could submerge yourself into the system and work with him and for him and serve him,
you can learn it.
I can learn this stuff. I'm smart enough to learn this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's with that concept that I offered myself as the doer, the fixer, the last resort. Don't worry, I'll do it. I'll carry the weapon. I'll protect. Whatever you need, I'll do it. But because of that, I was able to see through it.
Sure. So I would say that this type of information is impossible to soak up in 3 or 4 days. It's impossible.
Unless the teacher uses his rational ability and understanding that's way superior to yours to simplify it.
Sure.
But what we have here is layers of subterfuge.
Yes.
So I have my own story about Washington. I have my own story about all the Adams and all the various other characters. And it's all there together, and it's my story. And my story doesn't have to agree with everybody else's story because I'm telling you the truth. And what you end up with is a blind man's buff. You can never see through the mist.
Sure. And I mean, I think, and what we're basically circling around to is his state court decree. Because here you have a man who is teaching people that you can be free by filing this paperwork.
That's right.
And that once this paperwork is filed, you take certain steps. You can go into state court and you can get a state judge to give you a declaratory judgment, summary judgment, basically saying that you are sole beneficiary and heir to your all caps estate, which is what Phelps did. And then turned around and told every one of his students that we now need to do the same. Now that, again, this goes back to what we said earlier. The course changed so much over the years that it wasn't maybe 6 months after he got his decree that the story then became, well, no one can get the decree now. That window or that door has closed. However,
I'll make it easier. The same way as the house suffered, and he took the pictures, sent them to his wife, and went to bed. The minute he's home and dry, he's pulling in the nets.
Sure.
There ain't no fish for you. There ain't no net for you. And I have witnessed him on the phone And I have witnessed him when he's been aggrieved by somebody and him saying, I'm the only one. And that's very telling. Because there is no parachute. There is no target on the ground to land on. He's removed them all.
Yeah. It's just him.
And in a court, where there was a row between him and the court, and the attorney in the court was an attorney by the name of Eric, who appears to me to be a very competent attorney. It became something of a vendetta for Phelps against Eric. And I was there when the judge had retired and the officer was leaving, I think, and there was no one in there except me, sitting in the cheaper seat, and there was Ergood and Eric.
And Ergood is the
attorney
for the court.
He's the attorney that represents the Lebanon court. And Ergood turned around, he said, I don't believe that any judge had the right to give you that decree. And in my naivete at the time, because I really am not the brightest, I thought, the cheek of him.
Yeah.
But in retrospect, and looking at the text of what took place in the actual hearing where he's granted the decree, it has a certain choreography to it.
It does.
And what I realized was that the Jesuits in Harrisburg made a phone call and said, we want him to have this.
Right.
So what I'm saying now at this juncture is that we've all been fooled. But not quite. Because to be fair, a lot of what he said is the truth.
There's validity to a lot of
the problem is that he has no desire to complete the circle.
That's right.
Like at least the Oribus steak eats himself up entirely. But EJP reserves the right not to eat himself entirely.
He'll give you 95% of the information.
That's
right.
But
in the most crucial element, which are his conclusions, he turns you around.
Or as you enter the court, believing in what he's told you, and you commit yourself into the fray, believing what you've been told, holding your position, using what he said to you, you don't realize the gap between what you morally are prepared to do and what you expect somebody like him to do, and what's actually going to happen. And the reality of it is that he had a case up in Washington State. And he went over there and he spoke with the party and he represented them and he went up more than once and turned up at the court, etc. And he ended up going to lunch with the prosecutor. And he went back up a few weeks later and gave the prosecutor the course. And he just abandoned people in the drift.
So just so we're clear about this, we're kind of jumping around in time, but just a couple years ago, Phelps got contacted by a woman, I believe, in Washington State.
Yeah.
She had a run-in with a police officer. She got charged with, I believe, assault on a police officer, contacted Eric Phelps.
She had a plate that was like one of these plates that the wild guys put up, or they had their own plate. And EJP did that.
It was so
part of the sovereignty movement.
She was a sovereign citizen. She had a fake state license plate, but when she got arrested, she bit the officer and assaulted him and made it worse.
Yeah.
So she contacts our man Eric Phelps. Phelps flies out to Washington State multiple times to, quote, represent her
That's right.
in this criminal action.
That's right.
Now, went up once, went up twice, if not 3 times, ended up, I believe, plea bargaining for the woman, but she still got time, which she was not happy about. And then basically before the thing was said and done, he abandoned her because didn't like her boyfriend or husband or something to that effect.
Yeah, that's correct.
So basically left her up there to lurch, but then latched on to the prosecutor to go up there only after all the court case was said and done, and teach her the course in private at a hotel.
That's right.
How intimate.
Well,
so
we only serve those that are worth serving.
Oh, he's just doing the Lord's work, of course.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, so we see how the decree, and how important the decree is, and people may not understand how important it is now, but when we get to another section of this interview, it will become quite apparent why it was so important for him to get that decree.
Right.
But before we get to the reasoning why he wanted it in the first place, the real reason, let's talk about another character who enters this play,
Sister
this Shakespearean drama, comedy, and tragedy all in one. Tell me about the nun. Tell me about Sister Peculiar.
Yeah. Well, I call her Sister P for the purpose of the interview, but you let the cat out of the bag. The situation with her was that she was a small statured person, but quite a fiery piece of work, and very, very smart. Also very avaricious. So anytime EJP got into serious difficulty, she would arrive. And he did get into difficulty because he did a character assassination on somebody and then he carried it on. And in the process of carrying it on, he had what I call a brain fart, and he couldn't get the facts out. And the more he tried it, the more stupid he felt. And I went so far as to tell him, next man to speak loses. You know, you've tried it twice, it hasn't worked, so just shut the F up. And he did actually. But the point is that she came back up and she spent some time at the church. And she was resurrecting EJP, who had let the radio go, and various things had happened, and the whole ministry aspect of the church had diminished. But before we get to that particular instance, there's another instance where she's there, and it's at the time where my court case has gone west, and EJP has kind of let it happen. But, you know, I couldn't be sure of that at the time. I just felt it. And she turned up, and she knew all about administrative law and what had happened and how to reverse it. And she was just a ball of knowledge, and she could sit down and she could write and type, and she wrote this letter to an attorney, and she was going to get this guy. So the point is that all these things, good things were going to happen, that were going to change the outcome of my unfortunate circumstances. And naturally, seeing as she was so fantastic, EJP didn't have to get involved. He just gave it his blessing, and you don't need to worry, etc. And then over a period of months, she was a little bit more avaricious. But before that, she had this tax thing she was doing, and she was involved with some kind of a Moor in Florida. And the Moor had been filing the taxes, and the revenue were looking to talk to her, and she was alone, and she confided in me, and you know, she had tears in her voice when she spoke with me. And being a decent person, and I had a lot of respect for her, I wasn't going to let her go to the IRS on her own. Mm-hmm. So I drove to Florida on my own dollar and stayed in a hotel and turned up at the IRS office with her.
Yeah, accompanied her.
And brought her through the process.
Yeah.
Where they knew she had somebody with her, and we were able to talk about things in terms of what was happening, how it was happening, what we think might happen, etc. And everything was good. And I learned that she, in fact, was the inventor of the course.
So this nun, let's say, this alleged ex-nun,
yes,
is the one who originated the technical documents.
That's correct.
That are executed in Eric's course.
The entire thing was her concept.
It was her, and she gave it.
She gave it to him because
to Phelps.
What she did was she used the court in The Hague to recognize her, having finished her doings, to recognize her as an ambassador. So she's an American national, but she's also a diplomat, which is the ultimate use of what she has done. Now, what's going to happen here is that Phelps, do you want me to go on and explain what I think, what he did?
Yeah.
So Phelps took everything that he learned from her, and Phelps has other connections, he's connected to people that know the inside track on things that the normal person wouldn't know. And he is somewhat cushioned from reality by certain agencies.
Mm-hmm.
So he took the course and he went down to Orphan's Court and got his decree.
Mm-hmm.
But unlike Sister P, he didn't go to bankruptcy court.
Well, before you go on, let's get back to the trip to Florida.
Oh, yeah.
Now, you told me a very interesting story about the conversation that you and her had during that trip. Can you tell me a little bit about what was said?
Well, she is aware of Phelps's inner workings. And I have my suspicions about the inner workings.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't allay my suspicions.
Mm-hmm.
But Phelps is a figurehead for a much larger organization. Mm-hmm. And he's a very important figurehead because these people will state the fact that he was the giver of the truth. He was the guy that was able to tell you the truth, deliver on the truth, provide remedy, and you didn't support him. And that's his purpose. But in reality, he's a Jesuit.
Well, you say he's working for a larger organization.
Yeah.
Now, did you not confront Carrie with this proposition?
Yes, I did.
And did she confirm it or deny it?
Well, let's just put it this way. I don't feel I should totally reveal it at this juncture because we're all victims here. But he most definitely has a connection. And he has a connection which allows him not to be held to account for whatever he does. And he can write these bills of exchange because what has happened is the church became a bank. And he knows how to write these bills of exchange, and he writes these bills of exchange, and he understands the finer points of the law, and he cannot be taken in and put in a trial because you cannot prove he has ill intent. Can't prove it. You see, the trusts are not monitored, much like the Fort Knox gold. They're not monitored in times of turmoil where we have an emergency. We've had an emergency now for 100 and odd years. So it's only in times of peace that the stuff will be monitored. So there is no accounting on the trusts. And these trusts are used to generate funds by banks and various different financial organizations. And Phelps, in his private capacity, is able to tap into that reservoir and has done so successfully for people that I know have benefited from him. I don't believe they're members of the church. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen people benefit that are members of the church.
Yeah. Well, there's one thing. I mean, but let's not get too much into these. I don't want to get too much into the bills of exchange at this moment. But the main thing being is that Phelps has a group of people in the background supporting him with information, possibly funding. But definitely we know that the courses and a lot of the information that he has been given, it's not all, didn't organically come from him and his mind just in in the natural sense of you would think someone goes through the learning process.
Okay.
He was handed this information. Correct?
I'll help you clarify. Okay. He's got a brother who's in the intelligence side of business. Right, in an intelligence agency situation. And that would be his older brother, and he may be retired now, I don't know. But he is close to Phelps, probably closer to Phelps than anybody. So the situation is that Phelps, when he was writing his book and he was expanding on the book, there was a Jesuit that got involved in putting that tome together with him. You know. Mm-hmm. So that book has a large Jesuit input into it. And quite frankly, the amount of information that he's able to use, it's not humanly possible for you to have that on call.
Sure.
So what he has done is, he has people who are in the background, who are reliable, and they will go through multiple publications, books, published works, etc., and take the highlights and arm him with the highlights so that, like, if there's a conversation and he's on the other end of it, he is unassailable. He can just literally wipe the floor with the opposition. Mm-hmm. And, you know, for this kind of behavior to happen, it's not natural or normal in what we know as our normal society. But if you're involved in the spiritual exercises, and if you have been handled by proper handlers in your youth, etc., you can have your brain opened up into hundreds of different divisions, and you can store information. And that is the kind of devastating power he has when he's put in the seat. However, all this stuff ages, just like doctors believe certain pills are X, but they're no longer that way, but they'll still tell you that they are, because they're hermetically sealed and they're not able to absorb the fresh information. So I don't know if that helps.
Well, let's say this. It is my belief that Eric Jon Phelps is a CIA agent. His brother probably works for the agency. This ex-nun probably also involved.
Okay, well, I would concur with that, okay? I would concur with that.
I would
Reluctantly, I would concur with that. Reluctantly,
yeah.
Because...
Well, this is me being based on information that I have also seen and am privy to.
Yeah.
But then again, I don't know that for a fact, but this is just my surmising based on all the information. And as we move on, we'll see that there are certain things going on that would be impossible unless you were connected in high places. For example, we already talked about the court decree.
That's right. Wouldn't happen.
Wouldn't happen unless someone called the state capitol there in Harrisburg and said, you tell your state judge down there in Lebanon County that he's to rule this way when this man comes into your court.
And the interesting point is that the judge that did rule was not the premier judge.
Mm-hmm.
He was a high judge, probably in the number 2 slot.
But he wasn't the senior
he
judge.
wasn't the senior guy. So if there was a concurrence between the belief of the court and the belief of Harrisburg, what they were told, I would see the reigning king of the judge court being delighted to perform the duty on behalf of Harrisburg. But that wasn't the case. So therefore, I do believe that they did it because they were ordered to do it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I'm sorry for being hesitant about that CIA thing, but I just,
Oh no, brother.
there's only so much you
I get it. I've just, me personally, I've come to the point to where, in my mind, it's not even a question anymore. To where you used to think, could it be possible? Could it be? To where now I've come to the point to where it's more than likely the only
when you have a president
explanation.
when you have a president that's assassinated, and you've got 60, 70 years, and no one is able to prove anything, and this organization was never meant to operate within the borders of the United States, and you can see quite clearly that erosion of freedom and erosion of constitutional rights, etc., and the bogusness of some of the parties that are supposed to be there protecting our rights for doing the exact opposite. The multimillionaires that are in the Congress, and the complete absence of reality in terms of Supreme Court judges that can't agree to how many sexes there are. Something is absolutely rotten.
Sure.
And the only organization that can really contribute to that level of rottenness is the United States, who usurped Iran and every other country in South America and never put in a government that wasn't a bunch of communist lunatics, and supported the Russians and supported Mao. And I believe Mao was a member of the Yale Skull and Bones because they had a special branch office in China for Mao. And these are the parties that are the historical figures, and history being controlled by the Jesuits, and it making less and less sense.
Sure. Well,
that's just how it is, and it's all one big bonfire, the whole lot of it, because we have reached a point where we have no ethics or morals, and we have nobody in the country to run the place because they're all crooked to the nth degree, and it's collapsing.
Sure.
And they're bringing in people.
Let's not get off. Let's not get too off topic here.
Okay.
Here,
You let it.
let's not get too off topic here. But let's get back to EJP.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the so-called ministries of RBPB Church, which he discusses in the Ecclesiastical trust documents. One of the several ministries of the church is the use of commercial paper, financial instruments, such as promissory notes, bills of exchange. Another one would be something like a trade acceptance, something other than cash, credit card, or check. These other forms of financial instruments used to discharge debt and obligations. Now, wouldn't you say that's quite an odd ministry for a church to have this kind of financial aspect to it?
Well, if you look at the Catholic Church as the richest organization on the planet, if you look at the Pope with his 50-foot high walls in Rome that was donated by that dictator, Mussolini, if you can look at the fruit and identify where it's come from, and if you understand that what I'm saying is the truth, then you don't have any problem at all. Mm-hmm. Because it's like nice Father's Day. The entire world run by the Roman Catholic Church is poverty-stricken. It's just the condition of all the Catholics. And Ireland is one of the greatest examples of the loyal Irish to the papacy. And they're completely unaware that they were sold as slaves many, many moons ago in perpetuity to England so they could introduce Peter's pence. And even if you told them that, it wouldn't have any effect on them. But the point I'm making is that the invasion of the Muslims on this is all a papal ploy to collapse the Western world. And we have to remember the Pope who said, let's put capitalism back on the dung heap from which it came. And he's a Jesuit. And there's one thing you're going to find out with the Jesuits. They sure do deliver.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're looking at.
Right, but what we're talking about is RBPB Church and them, and that one of the ministries of Eric Jon Phelps' church is that he can write commercial instruments based on his decree that we've already covered.
For the people that matter.
Right, for whoever he deems worthy. Whoever he
That's
deems
got nothing
worthy.
to do with supporting the church or being in the church or whatever, because there's people out there I've never seen in church who are benefiting from commercial paper and have accounts that get refurbished.
Right.
So
people understand exactly what's going on. What Phelps is doing is the exact same thing that the Federal Reserve is doing, but just in a smaller and private capacity. You see, the Federal Reserve, the only reason why it is in existence is to take non-liquid treasury assets and liquidate them. That's it, in a nutshell. And what Phelps is doing is taking non-liquid assets being held by the Treasury in the form of the gold that was confiscated in 1934 with the Gold Reserve Act, and he is liquidating non-liquid assets based off his right and title to the claim of that gold, and using that title to said gold as one of the, quote, we the people, and writing commercial paper off of it. So, in fact, acting in the same capacity as the Federal Reserve does in relationship to the Treasury. So, what are we looking at, brother? Are we looking at a church or are we looking at a bank?
Oh, we're looking at a bank. We're looking at a bank. And we're looking at a rather obscene scenario here. We're dealing with lies. We're dealing with a preacher who omits, acts of omission being lies as well. We're dealing with covetousness. We're dealing with a raging jealousy. We're dealing with a complete dismissal of the basic humanity of do no harm. We're dealing with theft. And we're dealing with the will to do whatever is necessary to continue. We're not going to stop because someone got hurt. We're not going to stop. No. We're not going to do anything in terms of what the book says.
Yeah, it's not about right or wrong.
And that's right. And I will read a final passage of the Bible when we're getting to the actual close here. But this is a deliberate scenario here, where the people involved take pleasure in their deception. Well, let's bring in the word casuistry, which a lot of people don't fully understand. Mm-hmm. Casuistry is something applied to the Jesuits historically, and it's the finest point in conmanship. It's the PhD of lying. It's casuistry, and that's what you're looking at here.
It's the practice of mixing lies with the truth. Not just downright lies, but being able to weave truth into a lie.
As in Psalm 5.
That's exactly. It's deceitful, absolutely, as in the psalm that we're going to read from. Well, okay, so it's not a church because, again, they're not holding services. They really don't have any members now that you are no longer a member of the church. The wife and the son, they would very rarely show up towards the end. So we've covered that it's more of a banking, financial institution than a church.
I didn't see the son for over a year. I didn't see him at church. And service ceased. So I went for a year with no real service. And the week of Christmas, EJP came over to visit. And I would cook for him every week. And he'd come over and have dinner. And he'd been here for dinner on Monday. And he called me Tuesday morning, and he had a parishioner with him. And he wanted to know if you could bring him over to see me. And I said, is he in the room with you? Because very often he'd have a conversation with you as if the party wasn't there. But when he said, oh yeah, I'm on my own, I didn't trust him. I said, oh, okay, bring him over. So he brought the guy over. And they came in here on Tuesday, and I made coffee, and I had some cognac, and I offered some cognac coffee because I had the cream and the whole 9 yards. And they decided, having the coffee, they would try the cognac coffee, so I made them the cognac coffee. And the party that he brought over was very interested in my health and how sick I was, and how concerned he was for me. And I had got an email or text message telling me there was no church today, like I had for many, many weeks. Well, this guy then says to me, and Pastor had a special prayer especially for me. And I said, what? He said, oh, there was a special prayer for me. Well, I said, that's fantastic. And he said, well, he says, my blood now is highly oxygenated with the blood irradiation machine. And I said, highly oxygenated. And I'm looking at Phelps. And Phelps is looking at me. Because Phelps knows that I haven't caught now in the lie, but there is no church, but there was actually church, but I wasn't to be there. Mm-hmm. And that he's been telling people that I'm sick because, you see, trust has another side to it. The trust that he sold me is a predatory trust. So what he's doing is he's creating a situation where he's becoming my guardian, and he's indicating that I'm not well and I need help, and he's just bringing it all along whereby suddenly you're not around anymore, you're in some Shady Pines institution with one of his doctor friends. So that's the thing that's going on, and I let that whole thing go, and he then turned up on Christmas Day, which was Wednesday, and he brought this big honking knife, which was cutlery made. It wasn't some cheap thing, it was made by a cutler, and it had a lovely case on it, and it was quite an expensive knife. And if you know what a Bowie knife is, think of it twice the depth, but sort of the same length. And he says, I brought this over for you for Christmas and your birthday. And I said, well, thanks very much. And out he went. And before he goes, he said, I was concerned about you committing suicide.
As he gave you the knife?
Having given me the knife.
Yeah.
Now, you need to realize that he put me over here and he isolated me from everybody. So, he moved me into this place, but he used this as an isolation chamber. And he kept me away from everybody. And then he spun his web to the various people. And when people realize this guy can write, leisurely write stuff and make people happy, whatever, and the greed that's in people, they're happy to be sincere. And of course, if you're the problem child, that's not grateful for all the great benefits that you've had, they'll avoid you.
Well, let's get back to those financial instruments, because his operation down there is a church in name, in form only, but in function it's a bank. It's functioning as a bank, issuing lines of credit, paying off people's debts. Now, one very interesting point that we have to make about this is you sent me some information some time back. Now, this was information that as you were operating as Eric's helper, helping him, filing these papers here, printing this stuff out, email this to this person, even when he's out of town, having you go to his office and basically help him with administrative or even clerical type things. Hey, help me do this. Send this off to the post office.
Bring the mail to the office, etc.
Right. Now, one time, you found something in the trash can that you afterwards sent to me. And I'll talk about the document itself, but tell me, how did you come across this document?
Well, I was aware that he was doing certain things, and I was aware that there were peculiar instances of people involved in the church that, like, maybe scratch your head. Mm-hmm. But I tried to stay out of it the same way as I try to stay out of the marriage and try to stay out of the thing, not get sucked into anything, and just operate. Well, I was doing something and I was looking for a pair of glasses, so I'd forgotten my glasses, and I was moving around the desk to in where the computer thing is, and there'd be glasses on the shelf, and as I was moving, my foot hit the trash bin, and the stuff, I was moving speedily, and the trash just blew, all over the floor. So I get the glasses, mm-hmm. and I get them on, and I start going through the trash and picking it up. And in the process, I came across this bill of exchange.
Well,
and it was such a large amount that I thought, no one will ever believe you. And I kind of kept it.
You kept a copy of it?
I kept the copy. Because it indicated to me that
there's more lies.
Well, not just that it's lies, but that there's people operating against the United States of America. And they're inside, they're in the inner workings.
Yeah.
And the country's been hollowed out like Swiss cheese. And I was sick. Because I thought to myself, what have I done to damage this country? Unwittingly.
Yeah. What have you? Who have you enabled?
That's right.
Yeah. Well,
and I sent it to you because we met under the circumstances we did. And I've always seen you as having the highest of integrity. And I really don't think you have very many competitors. But I wanted you to at least know my anguish.
Yeah. Well, just to give a little more context to this document we're talking about. Before you found this document, right, he had told you, myself, and a couple other people that I've independently verified that he had written $1 trillion bill of exchange, private bill of exchange, to, quote, the Treasury mm-hmm. for the defense of the United States.
Yeah. So
now, come to find out, with what you found, that this was not the United States Treasury at all that he was referring to, but in fact was another group that had nothing to do with the government whatsoever.
Well, let me clarify something. EJP has a banker who travels through the Middle East and through South American countries and so on places, and has an agent who peddles EJP's paper.
Right.
Foreign government.
Tries to sell his promissory notes, bills of exchange.
EJP writing $1 trillion for the defense of the United States, I believe he did. And I believe they took it, and I believe they cashed it. The item I sent you is just another one. And you have to you have to think on the scale of, you really need to abandon your brain and leave it outside when you come into the room. Because there's a greed and a power lust that normal people can't understand.
Sure.
But that was written, and I believe he did actually write that because he was trying to cash some things with the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve didn't want to take the stuff off him. And he sent paperwork to the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve got the paperwork and steamed it, looked at what was inside and sent it back. Now this is what he told me, and I was there when he sent the stuff. And he had sent something before, and they had said, well, you sent it to the wrong people, and they'd given him the information, and this time he was sending it, what he understood was the information he was given, and it certainly looked like it was tampered with, and they gave it back. Later on it became one, well, this paperwork needs to be submitted outside of the United States, it needs to be submitted overseas for it to be accepted at the window. I only can tell you what I picked up on. I tried never to ask questions.
Sure.
Because I never asked them a question relating to money, relating to buying the house, relating to bills of exchange. I just listened to what he told me.
Sure.
And I could see the gaps. But when I saw that piece of paper, I knew that there was a whole world that I had no idea about that he's involved in.
Yeah, I get your point. Again, your experiences with him are far more involved than anything that I've ever had to deal with him on any kind of level. But I will say, I do believe that what you sent me, that particular bill that you found a copy of, which was written to a group called the OITC, the Office of International Treasury Control, also known as the UNOITC, or the United Nations Office of International Treasury Control. This group is a group of con men, international fraudsters. You can look them up on the internet. It's obviously very easy to figure out who it is you're dealing with here.
Involved in the enslavement of the American people and the entire Western free world as we know it.
Well, absolutely. And what you have here is you have a group who is now getting funding to where they couldn't get any funding before. And now with our boy, they've got $1 trillion. They've got his blessing, just like the Pope. And what what this really gets into, and I'm sure some of you out here listening probably have never heard of this group, the OITC. But what you may have heard of is a concept called Nasara and Gusara. This group, this OITC, I believe, again, this is just my personal opinion, Brother Eric, but through my research, I've come to believe that Phelps, the Nun, Eddie Rourke, right, the OITC, and many other people on the internet are all involved in the same con game.
That's right.
Which is, I believe, going to be some kind of attempt to legitimize this Nasara Gusara stuff you see all over the internet.
That's right.
It may have something to do with the aliens they say are out there.
Well, you've George Soros.
So you've got all this stuff moving in the background.
You have major people like George Soros who spend money to disrupt the legitimate, so-called legitimate government, who have not got people's best interests at heart. And then you have these competing groups that are singing in the chorus that are doing the same thing, but they're not obvious. they appear to be doing good, but in reality, they're the levelers. They're Cromwell's levelers.
Yeah, well, what you have here, no doubt, is an agency-run operation to where these international fraudsters and con artists are allowed to operate because of who it is that they work for. Not because they're so slick and so good that they can't get caught.
Well, they've stolen everything, but they're not going to be ever held responsible because
That's
it's only
exactly
stolen because
right.
someone admits it's stolen. No, it's not stolen. It's there, but no one's going to audit it. So it's
well. Here's the thing: when you're more than likely involved in this kind of treasury-run operation, that's exactly what you can get. You can teach people tax classes, and then show them the couple of loopholes that'll work this year. Right? But come next year, when those loopholes get closed, you've got to change your tactics. And only the insiders know how to do this. So that's why I'm convinced the Treasury is involved, intelligence agencies, and probably the military intelligence as well.
Yeah. Well, it's all done by fraud. I mean, the introduction of the removal of the gold from the currency, the votes that took place, no one even had a copy of the emergency bill, nothing. It was just rammed through on a Christmas Eve, and there was just enough people to make a quorum. So we see this with Abraham Lincoln, whereby he gets militarily involved and he writes the first executive order. And what we have is a dictator type who will completely override Congress and all of the powers of everybody that's allegedly designated to the three branches of government. And the fourth branch is never mentioned, but it is a fourth branch, and that's administrative, and it's not even in the Constitution.
Yeah,
and it's responsible for most of what's going on with the communist propagandas, etc.
It's extra constitutional.
Yeah. So the thing we're looking at here is the fruit of the poison tree. That's what we're looking at. And it's not designated as poison because the people are too corrupt to see it as poison. But really and truly, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at a nation that's being poisoned at every level, from the air we breathe, to the water we drink, to the food we eat, to what we call money, to the whole concept of how it's done. Well, one also needs to think about this. That, Franklin, the man who brought it all together for them, he had STDs. I mean, he was in a wheelchair because he had STDs. And he was ultimately assassinated, although it's not public knowledge. But he was assassinated. And that's the secret of how things are done. That remains silent.
Sure.
And once you're prepared to remove life, that's all you need to do. And what we're looking at with all these show trials that we're seeing around us are various people exposing something or allegedly exposing something, and then the crackdown that comes because of that, and then the mishandling of things, which, let's look at that head of the FBI, whose old man was the head of the Gestapo. Right. So there's a consistency here, and it's about lying, and it's about legitimizing the lying, and it's about legitimizing liars with more liars. Sure. And it's layer after layer of lies, and we've reached the end of the pole now where it's all collapsing.
Well, let me ask you this. Have you ever met anyone who Eric Jon Phelps wrote one of these bills of exchange for, that in which they actually worked?
Yes.
One or multiple?
Well, I believe...
You don't have to get into details of every one. But
definitely not more than one. Now, the situation is that he is in power to help people, but he's not inclined. And he will help for the most nefarious reasons. He won't help because it's the good Christian thing to do. or it's the good Catholic thing to do, or it's the good anything thing to do. He will only do it to control you.
For his benefit, not yours.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'd like to point out that I bought a blood irradiation machine.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't had blood irradiation in years. And he knows I'm ill, and he knows I have diabetes. And I've asked him, but he would never do it. So what I'm telling you here is something I've learned in a very slow process, where I've allowed so much stuff to go by me and not reacted to it, so that I can be absolutely sure in what I'm telling you.
Sure. So you know of multiple people who EJ has written these bills for, and those debts, whether they be credit card or medical debts, those obligations were discharged by him executing a private bill of exchange. Is that correct?
That's correct. And he's done nothing for me. I mean, he's had an opportunity to do something.
Like you said, he could help.
Oh yeah,
but
and people that know him, and know of my years of relationship with him, have mentioned. And he indicates, oh, I might, whatever. But he won't. Because I told him at that table, when he came back the following Monday after Christmas, I said to him, and I gave him back his knife, and I told him, I said, you know, I never said anything to you, and I've held it on for so long, and I've never confronted you, because I've never embarrassed you in front of anybody, and I would never want to. But I said, you wrote to me, and you told me there was no church, and that was a lie. And I cannot have a liar as a pastor. And he went to say something, and I said, say nothing. Consider the position. Take as much time as you like. And you get back to me and tell me what you think you can do to make amends for this break in our relationship. And he left about 9 o'clock at night. And the following morning, early, maybe 9:30, 10, a party that's a mutual acquaintance arrived here, sat here with me for an hour, and we talked and we chatted, and I went out to the car with him, and he's at the door of his car, and he says, what's all this I hear about you resigning from the church? And I said, me resigning? He said, yeah. I said, well, I'm not aware of resigning. But I said, I did have a private conversation with BJP as to lies. And I told him to consider a position and take his time and let me know. And I said, 24 hours haven't elapsed, and you're telling me I'm resigning from the church.
Breach of confidence, breach of trust.
Well, breach of everything. So the point I'm trying to make here is that this is a very measured, timed response. I have not spoken of these things. This is the month of July. These things happened pre-Christmas and Christmas.
So we're talking 8 months ago.
That's right. I had a car accident. I never had any help there. I lost my vehicle, a vehicle I used to drive around and do all his messages and put gas in, etc., etc., etc. Never anything. And the point I'm making is that I'm not imagining anything. And I've told you the absolute truth. And I want to make one point here, if I may, in relation to how things are dealt with. And I'm going to refer to Psalm 5. And there's a word here called leasing. And I'll read the psalm to you. Verse 6, Psalm 5, verse 6. And it says, and you're talking about God, thou shalt destroy them that speak leasing. The Lord will abhor the bloody and deceitful man. So, what's meant by the leasing is where someone is speaking falsehood and lies. And the Psalm 5 is assuring that God's justice will prevail. So I gave you Ephesians, which was Eric's verses, often quoted by him. And I see Psalm 5 as it's in the hand of the Lord. And I've spoken the truth. And whatever happens, happens. And I've no regret about it one way or the other.
Well, let me wrap this up in one final question for you. Given everything we've discussed, the history, the background, given the nefarious associates, let's call them, that EJP has been around and associated with, and we only discussed a couple here, but given that, given the lies, the deceit, the leasing, as you read from Psalm 5, given the changes in the courses, right, over the years, the omissions, the downright private interpretations that are false, given the fact that he has, let's say, left his first estate as a pastor and moved into ecclesiastical banking, the best phrase I can think of for it. Let me ask you this, brother. In your opinion, in your feeling on the situation, knowing the man, do you think he should stop calling himself a preacher and retire?
Well, what he does is up to his own conscience, and unfortunately he doesn't have one. But the Lord will stop him. That's just the way it is. And you reach a point where you're so useful because of your lies that you become a liability. And that's not for me to decide.
I think you're absolutely right. Whether he crosses the Lord one too many times, or whether he crosses his associates on the other side, you're absolutely right. One way or another, he will become someone's liability. And liabilities get discharged.
Yeah.
Right? So, brother, I want to say thank you so much for sitting down with me, for doing this interview. I know it's not easy going through a lot of this pain, these memories, but you got this on record.
Well, there's years of it here.
Years.
And I've left a lot of stuff out.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm not painting myself in any glorious way, shape, or form. But what I am saying is that he had no right to do to me the stuff he did. And I can only speak for me. I just happen to be close enough to see it firsthand, and I paid a price for it. And, you know, may the Lord have mercy on his soul.
Yeah. He does need prayer.
Oh, absolutely.
And he needs salvation as well.
Absolutely. Well, you see, I think that you reach a point whereby you're hardened to the extent that you just cannot be saved. And I think that's the threat and the unspoken reality of those that indulge in the self-aggrandizement in this world, where they have everything. If you read their death confessions from Voltaire all the way through, they know they've eternity facing them, and they know they're wrong. And they're all cowards in the end. It doesn't matter how brave a man may be. It's like a bag of candy. If you keep dipping into it, you put your hand in the bag, there'll be no candy left. And I don't see these people as necessarily brave even to begin with.
No, I really respect your answer on that. And I take the same position. I think that I will no longer personally look at Eric Jon Phelps or any of his biblical preaching. I will never look at it as if the same way again. I know I have to take it with a grain of salt because I understand who the man is behind the voice, who he is when that radio show is not being recorded on the internet, who he is when he's not on the telephone with you, when he's in private.
Yeah.
And once you get the glimpse of that man, then you understand who you're really dealing with.
Yeah, like Sean Diddy Combs is up there on trial for, multiplicity of stuff. And his only purpose is to get his records on other people so they can blackmail them. And EJP is astoundingly more effective than Sean Diddy Combs would ever be.
Oh, no doubt.
So that's the world we're living in, and for anybody that's shocked, I apologize to you, but that's the truth, unvarnished, and I get no pleasure in telling it to you. So.
And again, this is Harrison Katz interviewing Eric Noel Hargaden, Myerstown, Pennsylvania, July 6th, 2025. Eric, thank you so much, brother.
You're welcome, buddy. God bless you.
God bless you too.